When Damien Vale's 6-year-old son spoke his first word in years, it wasn't to his father. It wasn't to the army of specialists his billions had bought. It was to a waitress making minimum wage who saw what everyone else had missed. This is the story of how the richest man in Seattle learned that some things can't be purchased, some wounds can't be diagnosed, and some miracles arrive in the quietest packages. A single father desperate to hear his son's voice, a woman running from her past, and one winter night that changed everything. Stay until the end to see how it all unfolds. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The rain came down in sheets that December evening, turning Seattle's streets into rivers of black glass. Damien Vale sat in the back of his Mercedes S-Class, watching the city blur past through water-streaked windows, and felt nothing. Not the leather against his back, not the heated seat beneath him, not even the familiar weight of his Patek Philippe Ausuku watch on his wrist, a piece worth more than most people earned in 5 years. He felt nothing because feeling required energy, and energy required hope, and hope had been systematically dismantled over the past 4 years by an army of specialists who took his money and gave him nothing but increasingly creative ways to say, "We don't know." In the seat beside him, Noah sat perfectly still. The boy was small for 6. Thin wrists, dark hair that needed cutting, gray eyes that looked past things rather than at them. He wore a navy sweater Damien had laid out that morning, corduroy pants, shoes that cost $200 and would be outgrown in 3 months. His hands rested in his lap, fingers occasionally twitching in patterns only he understood. "We're almost there, buddy," Damien said quietly. Noah didn't respond. Noah never responded. 4 years. 1,461 days since his son had last spoken. Damien knew the exact number because he'd counted every single one, kept a tally in a notebook he'd never show another living soul. 1,461 mornings of waking up to silence. 1,461 nights of tucking a child into bed and getting nothing back. Not a word, not a protest, not even a cry. The doctors had words for it. Selective mutism, they said at first. Trauma response. Psychological withdrawal following maternal abandonment. They'd refined their terminology over the years, added modifiers and subcategories, prescribed therapies and medications, and behavioral interventions. Damien had tried everything: speech therapists, play therapists, art therapists, equine therapists. He'd flown specialists in from Boston, from London, from a clinic in Switzerland that charged $50,000 for a 2-week evaluation. The conclusion was always the same: Noah could speak. Physically, there was nothing wrong. His vocal cords worked. His cognitive development, while delayed in some areas, showed no fundamental impairment. He simply chose not to, or couldn't choose to. The distinction apparently mattered to the professionals. To Damien, it changed nothing. His son was silent, and he didn't know how to reach him. The Mercedes pulled up to Marchand, one of those restaurants where you needed a reservation 6 months in advance, and your credit card's magnetic strip started sweating when you walked through the door. Damien came here occasionally for business dinners, performances where he played the role of successful entrepreneur, while other rich men evaluated him across white tablecloths and $30 glasses of wine. Tonight wasn't business. Tonight was Marcus Holt's birthday. And Marcus had been Damien's college roommate back when Damien was just another computer science major with more ambition than sense. Marcus had stuck around through the lean years, through the first failed startup, through the brutal divorce. He was one of maybe 3 people Damien actually trusted. "Mr. Vale?" The valet opened the door holding an umbrella that probably cost more than he made in a day. Damien climbed out, then reached back for Noah. The boy moved mechanically, letting himself be guided out of the car and onto the sidewalk. Rain hammered the umbrella above them. Noah didn't flinch, didn't react, just stood there, waiting for his father to tell him where to go. "Come on," Damien said, putting a hand on his son's shoulder. They walked through Marchand's heavy doors into warmth and golden light. The restaurant was exactly what you'd expect: exposed brick, Edison bulbs, tables set with the kind of precision that suggested someone had used a ruler. Piano music drifted from somewhere, something classical that Damien didn't recognize. The air smelled like rosemary and money. "Mr. Vale, welcome back." The hostess was young, professionally beautiful, The kind of woman who'd perfected the art of being pleasant without being memorable. Your party is already seated. Right this way. She led them through the dining room, past tables of people who looked like they'd never worried about anything more serious than which wine paired best with duck. Damien felt Noah's shoulder tense under his hand. Too many people, too much noise, too much everything. But the boy kept walking, kept moving, because that's what he did. He endured. Marcus had taken the corner table, the one with a view of the city lights spreading out like a circuit board. He stood when he saw them approaching, broad smile already in place. Marcus was shorter than Damien, stockier, with the kind of tan you only got from actual vacations instead of standing under fluorescent lights in conference rooms. There he is, Marcus said, pulling Damien into a one-armed hug. And there's my man Noah. He crouched down to the boy's level, didn't try to touch him, just smiled. Hey buddy, good to see you. You like pasta? They've got this truffle thing here that's basically magic. Noah looked at him, through him really, standard response. Marcus didn't miss a beat, just straightened back up. Sit, sit. I already ordered appetizers because I'm a terrible human being who couldn't wait. They settled in, Damien in one chair, Noah in the seat beside him. Noah immediately picked up his napkin, began folding it with intense concentration. One corner to the opposite corner, crease, unfold, repeat. Damien had learned not to stop him. These small rituals kept the boy calm, gave him something to control in a world that must feel utterly chaotic. So, Marcus said, pouring water from the carafe into Damien's glass. How's the Kronos deal looking? We're close, Damien said. Their board is split, but Reynolds is on our side. If we can get 2 more votes, the acquisition goes through. And if you can't? Then we walk, and they probably tank within 18 months. Their infrastructure is hemorrhaging money. Marcus nodded, took a sip of his wine. He knew better than to ask about Noah directly. Understood that Damien would share if there was anything to share. There never was. The appetizers arrived. Burrata, charcuterie, something involving octopus that probably required 3 days of preparation. Marcus dove in, talking about his latest vacation to Belize, his girlfriend's annoying habit of rearranging his kitchen every time she stayed over, the Tesla he was thinking about buying. Damien half listened, watching Noah instead. The boy had abandoned the napkin, was now tracing invisible patterns on the edge of the table. Same gesture, over and over. His lips moved slightly, like he was counting or reciting something no one else could hear. What did he think about? What happened in that head during all those silent hours? Damien would have paid everything he owned to know. Would have traded his company, his houses, every asset and investment for just 5 minutes inside his son's mind. Mr. Vale? Damien looked up. A waitress stood beside the table, young, perhaps late 20s or early 30s, with light brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wasn't polished like the hostess, didn't have that calculated professionalism. Instead, she looked almost apologetic about existing, like she was afraid of taking up space. I'll be taking care of you tonight, she said quietly. Can I get you started with drinks, or do you need another minute? Her voice was soft. Not timid, exactly, but gentle, like she was trying very hard not to disturb anyone. I'll have another glass of the Barolo, Marcus said. Same as before. Of course. She wrote it down. Then she looked at Damien, and for just a second her eyes flicked to Noah, and something shifted in her expression. Not pity. Damien had learned to recognize pity from across a crowded room, but something else. Curiosity, maybe. Or recognition. Just water for me, Damien said, and milk for my son, if you have it. We do. She hesitated, then looked at Noah again. Is whole milk okay? It was a small thing, directing the question toward Noah instead of his father. Most servers treated the boy like furniture, addressed everything to Damien, as if Noah wasn't even there. Noah didn't respond, of course, but his fingers stopped their pattern tracing for just a moment. Whole milk is fine, Damien said. The waitress nodded, wrote it down. I'll be right back with those. She walked away, moving between tables with the same quiet efficiency. Damien watched her go, then turned back to Marcus. Sorry, what were you saying? I wasn't, Marcus said, grinning. I was watching you watch the waitress. I wasn't. Relax, I'm not judging. She's cute. Little shy, maybe, but cute. I wasn't watching her like that, Damien said, irritated. I was just... He stopped, because he didn't actually know what he was doing. Something about the way she'd looked at Noah had caught his attention, that was all. Nothing more. Marcus laughed, held up his hands. Okay, my mistake. The waitress returned with their drinks, setting them down with careful precision. The milk came in an actual glass, not a plastic cup. Another small thing that suggested she'd thought about it, considered what would work best. Are you ready to order, or would you like a few more minutes? She asked. Few more minutes, Marcus said. I'm still deciding between the duck and the short rib. The duck is excellent, she said. The chef does it with a cherry reduction. But the short rib is probably our most popular entree. Dangerous knowledge, Marcus said. Now, I want both. She smiled, just slightly. It changed her whole face, made her look younger. I can ask if the kitchen would do a half portion of each, if you'd like. You, Marcus said, pointing at her with mock seriousness, are my new favorite person. I'll see what I can do. She looked at Damien. And for you? The salmon, Damien said. He ordered it every time he came here, not because he particularly loved salmon, but because it was something he didn't have to think about. How would you like that prepared? However the chef recommends. She nodded, wrote it down. Then she did that thing again, looked at Noah, not past him, but at him, like she was actually seeing him. And what about you? She asked the boy directly. Damien opened his mouth to answer for him, the way he always did, but something made him stop. Maybe it was the way she'd crouched down slightly, bringing herself to Noah's eye level. Maybe it was the fact that she was waiting, really waiting, like she actually expected an answer. Noah's eyes lifted, not all the way to her face, but up from the table. It was more engagement than Damien had seen from him all week. The waitress stayed crouched, patient. Do you like pasta? She asked. We have a really good mac and cheese. It's not on the menu, but I can have them make it. Noah's fingers twitched. Or if you prefer something else, that's okay too, she continued, voice still soft. The chicken is good, so are the mashed potatoes. You don't have to decide right now. She wasn't pushing, wasn't demanding, just offering options and waiting to see what happened. Damien felt something crack open in his chest, something he'd kept carefully sealed for years. It wasn't hope, he'd learned better than that, but it was close. Possibility, maybe. The suggestion that maybe, just maybe, someone could reach his son in a way he couldn't. Noah's hand moved, slow, deliberate. He picked up his napkin, the one he'd been folding earlier, and placed it carefully on the edge of the table. The waitress glanced at it, then back at Noah. The napkin is white, she said thoughtfully. Like the mac and cheese. Is that a yes for the mac and cheese? Noah's fingers twitched again. It could have been anything, a random movement, a nervous tick. But Damien had spent 4 years studying his son's every gesture, and this felt different. This felt like communication. The waitress smiled. Not a big smile, not performative, just a small, genuine expression of understanding. Mac and cheese it is, she said. I'll make sure they put extra cheese on it. She straightened up, wrote it down in her little notepad. When she looked at Damien, there was something in her eyes he couldn't quite name. Not pity, not even sympathy. Just a quiet acknowledgement that she'd seen something others missed. I'll put this in for you, she said. Shouldn't be too long. Then she was gone, disappearing back into the rhythm of the restaurant. Marcus was staring at him. What? Damien asked. Did that just happen? What? Your kid he just communicated with the waitress using a napkin. He didn't. Damien stopped. It might have been nothing. It wasn't nothing, Marcus said firmly. I've known Noah since he was born. I've never seen him do anything like that with a stranger, ever. Damien looked at his son. Noah had gone back to his invisible patterns, tracing shapes on the tablecloth. But there was something different in his posture, something less rigid. It was probably coincidence, Damien said, but he didn't believe it. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying him. When was the last time you felt hopeful about anything involving Noah's situation? Don't. I'm serious. When? Damien didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because the truth was that hope had been beaten out of him by an endless parade of specialists who promised breakthroughs and delivered nothing. Hope was dangerous. Hope was what kept you writing checks to people who couldn't help, kept you believing that maybe this time, this treatment, this approach would be the one that worked. It's not healthy, Marcus said quietly. Giving up on hope. I haven't given up, Damien said. I'm being realistic. There's a difference between realistic and defeated. Before Damien could respond, Noah made a sound. Not a word. He hadn't heard a word from his son in 4 years, but a hum. Soft, almost inaudible under the restaurant's ambient noise. But it was there. Marcus heard it too. His eyes widened slightly. Damien sat very still, afraid that any movement might break whatever spell had been cast. Noah kept humming, a tuneless melody that nevertheless suggested he was engaged with something, aware of something beyond his own internal world. The waitress returned with bread, setting it down in the center of the table. She glanced at Noah, registered the humming, and something in her expression shifted. She didn't comment on it, didn't draw attention to it. Just set down the bread and left again. But Damien saw the way her hands had paused for just a fraction of a second. She'd noticed. Okay, Marcus said, keeping his voice low. I'm not crazy, right? Something is definitely happening here. I don't know, Damien said honestly. Maybe. They ate their appetizers in relative silence. Marcus, for once, seemed to understand that talking would ruin whatever fragile thing was forming. Noah continued his humming intermittently, occasionally reaching for a piece of bread and methodically tearing it into increasingly small pieces. When their entrees arrived, the waitress brought Noah's mac and cheese in a small bowl, not a plate. Another tiny consideration, easier for small hands to manage. She set it down in front of him without fanfare. Extra cheese, like I promised, she said quietly. Let me know if you need anything else. Noah looked at the bowl, actually looked at it, focused and present in a way he rarely was with food. Then he picked up his fork, not the child-sized one Damien usually had to request, but a regular fork, and took a bite. He ate. Not mechanically, not like he was simply going through motions. He ate like the food actually mattered, like he'd made a choice and was following through on it. Damien's throat tightened. He'd seen his son eat 1,000 meals, but this felt different. This felt like participation instead of tolerance. The rest of dinner passed in a strange haze. Marcus talked about something, work, probably, or his girlfriend, but Damien barely heard him. He was too busy watching Noah, watching the waitress as she moved through the restaurant, trying to understand what the hell had just happened. When they finished, when Marcus insisted on paying, "It's my birthday, you asshole, let me have this," Damien found himself lingering. He didn't want to leave, didn't want to break whatever connection Noah had formed, tenuous as it was. The waitress brought the check to Marcus, then glanced at Damien. Was everything okay? Yes, Damien said. Then, because it felt inadequate, thank you for... He gestured vaguely at Noah, for how you were with him. She looked confused, like she didn't understand what she'd done that warranted thanks. Of course, she said. He's a sweet kid. How would she know? She'd spent maybe 5 minutes total interacting with him, but she'd said it like she meant it, like she'd seen something in Noah that made her certain of his sweetness. I'm Damien, he said suddenly. Damien Vale. Hannah, she said. Hannah Cole. They shook hands. Hers was smaller than his, calloused in a way that suggested she worked with them often. Not soft, not pampered. Working hands. Do you... Damien stopped, aware he was about to cross some line, but unable to stop himself. Do you have experience with children? Professionally, I mean? Hannah's expression shuddered. It happened so fast he almost missed it, like a door slamming shut. Not anymore, she said. Excuse me, I should check on my other tables. She left before he could ask anything else. Marcus was watching him with undisguised interest. So, he said, still just noticing her professionally? Shut up, Damien muttered. But as they gathered their things, as he helped Noah into his coat and prepared to walk back out into the rain, Damien couldn't stop thinking about it. About the way Noah had responded to her. About the careful consideration in every small gesture she'd made. About the way she'd looked when he asked about her experience with children, like he'd touched a wound she'd tried very hard to pretend didn't exist. In the car, Noah fell asleep almost immediately, curled up in his seat with his head against the window. Damien watched the city pass by and replayed the evening in his mind. The napkin. The humming. The way his son had actually looked at someone new, really looked, for the first time in longer than he could remember. It probably meant nothing. Probably just a fluke. A moment of random chance that he was building into something bigger because he was desperate. Desperate enough to see patterns where none existed, to read hope into the smallest gestures. But what if it wasn't? What if this quiet waitress with sad eyes and gentle hands had found a way through Noah's walls that no expensive specialist ever had? The thought was dangerous. The thought was the kind of thing that led to disappointment and crushed expectations. Damien had learned to armor himself against thoughts like that. And yet, he pulled out his phone, typed Marchand Restaurant Seattle into Google. Their website came up, sleek and minimal. He clicked through to Our Team, scanned the photos until he found her. Hannah Cole, server. No bio, just a picture that looked slightly uncomfortable, like she hadn't wanted her photo taken. He stared at it for a long moment, this woman he'd met once, who'd spent maybe 10 minutes total with his son. Then he closed the browser and put his phone away. It was nothing. Had to be nothing. But 3 days later, when Noah threw one of his rare tantrums, screaming without sound, throwing things, unreachable in his distress, Damien found himself thinking about her. About the way she'd crouched down to Noah's level, patient and undemanding. About how she'd waited for his response instead of filling the silence with chatter. A week after that, he made a reservation at Marchand. Not for a business dinner, not for a friend's birthday, just for him and Noah. He told himself it was because Noah had eaten well there, had seemed calmer. He told himself it was good to establish routines, to give the boy familiarity. He told himself a lot of things. But the truth, the thing he wouldn't admit even to himself until much later, was simpler and more complicated than any of his justifications. For the first time in 4 years, someone had looked at his son and seen possibility instead of a problem to be solved. And Damien Vale, who could buy almost anything, who had built an empire through sheer force of will and intelligence, found himself desperate to understand how a shy waitress making minimum wage had done what all his money couldn't, how she'd made his son look up. The reservation was for 7 o'clock on a Thursday. Damien left work early, picked up Noah from his private school, where the teachers were kind but mostly ineffective, where his son spent most of his time in a corner with blocks while other children played games he couldn't or wouldn't join. "We're going to that restaurant again," Damien said as Noah climbed into the car. "The one with the good mac and cheese, remember?" Noah stared out the window, but his fingers tapped against his leg 3 times in succession. It was something, maybe, or nothing. Damien had given up trying to decode every gesture. Traffic was lighter than usual. They arrived 10 minutes early, sat in the car while rain hammered the windshield. Damien's heart was beating faster than it should, like he was nervous, which was insane. He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, had stood in front of hostile boards and hostile shareholders, and kept his voice steady. A dinner reservation shouldn't make him anxious. But it did, because wrapped up in this dinner was a hope he'd tried very hard not to acknowledge. The hope that whatever had happened last time wasn't a fluke. That Hannah, that shy waitress who'd looked at Noah like he was worth seeing, might do it again. They walked into Marchand at exactly 7. Different hostess this time, same professional smile. "Welcome to Marchand. Do you have a reservation?" "Val," Damien said. "For 2. She checked her screen, nodded. "Right this way." She led them to a different table, one in the middle of the dining room. Too exposed, too much traffic. "Actually," Damien said, "is that corner table available? The one by the window?" The hostess hesitated. "That's usually reserved for parties of 4 or more." "I'll pay the difference," Damien said. "Whatever you'd normally charge." Money, as always, solved the problem. They were reseated at the corner table, the same one he'd shared with Marcus. Noah immediately went to the window, pressed his hands against the glass, staring out at the rain-soaked city. "Someone will be right with you," the hostess said, then disappeared. Damien waited, watched the staff move through the restaurant. A different waitress approached their table and his stomach sank. "Good evening," she said brightly. "I'm Claire, I'll be—" "Is Hannah working tonight?" Damien asked, then immediately felt like an idiot. He sounded desperate. He sounded like exactly the kind of creep he'd always made fun of. Claire's smile tightened slightly. "She is, but she's assigned to a different section. I'm happy to take care of—" "Could she take this table instead?" Damien asked. "I'd be willing to—" He stopped himself before he said something about money again. But Claire's expression had already shifted from professional courtesy to vague suspicion. "I'll check with the manager," she said carefully. "One moment." She left. Damien sat there feeling like an idiot, aware that he'd just made this incredibly awkward. But he'd come here for a reason, and that reason was currently serving tables on the other side of the restaurant. A man in his 50s approached the table, wearing the kind of expensive suit that managers wore when they wanted to look important. "Mr. Vale? I'm Thomas, the general manager. Claire mentioned you requested a specific server?" "Hannah," Damien said. "Hannah Cole. She served us last week, and my son responded well to her. He has some behavioral issues, and I thought—" He stopped, regrouped. "I'd appreciate if she could serve us tonight. I understand if that's not possible, but I'd consider it a personal favor." Thomas studied him for a moment, making calculations. Damien knew what he was thinking. Was this a problem customer, or was this potentially good money? The suit, the watch, the way Damien held himself, it all added up to someone worth keeping happy. "Of course," Thomas said smoothly. "I'll arrange it. Give me just a moment." He left. Damien waited, feeling Noah's silence beside him like a weight. The boy had abandoned the window, was now stacking sugar packets into an increasingly elaborate tower. Then Hannah appeared, looking confused and slightly worried. She approached the table slowly, like she was expecting bad news. "Mr. Vale," she said. "Thomas said you requested me specifically. Is there a problem with—" "No," Damien said quickly. "No problem. How did he explain this without sounding insane? My son responded well to you last time. I thought it might be good for him to have consistency." Hannah looked at Noah, who was completely absorbed in his sugar packet architecture. "Consistency," she repeated slowly. "I know how it sounds," Damien said. "I know this is probably strange, but he doesn't usually engage with new people. And you got him to communicate. The napkin thing. That was just—" Hannah stopped. "I didn't really do anything." "You did," Damien insisted. "You spoke to him instead of at him. You waited for him to respond instead of expecting me to answer for him. You saw him." Hannah's expression flickered with something Damien couldn't identify. Pain, maybe. Or recognition. "Most servers would do the same thing," she said quietly. "They don't," Damien said. "They really don't." A long moment of silence. Noah's sugar packet tower collapsed. He started rebuilding it immediately, methodical and focused. "Okay," Hannah said finally. "I'm happy to serve you. Can I start you with drinks?" And just like that, they were back to normal interaction. Server and customer. Nothing weird about it. Except it wasn't normal because Damien was watching her watch Noah, and there was something in the way she moved around the table, careful, aware, like she was navigating around something fragile, that suggested she understood more than she was saying. "Water for me," Damien said. "And milk for Noah." "Whole milk again?" "Yes." She wrote it down, but he noticed her pen had paused. "Does he usually drink milk with dinner?" It was such a small question, but it suggested she'd been thinking about Noah since last time, remembering details. "Usually juice," Damien admitted, "but he drank the milk last time, so I thought—" "Consistency," Hannah said with the faintest hint of a smile. "Right." She nodded, made a note. "I'll be right back." She brought the drinks, took their order, salmon for Damien again, mac and cheese for Noah without needing to ask, then disappeared into the kitchen. Damien watched her go, then forced himself to look away. He was staring. He was being weird. Noah hummed. Damien's attention snapped back to his son, the same tuneless melody from last time, quiet and almost thoughtful. "What are you thinking about, buddy?" Damien asked. No response, of course, but the humming continued. Throughout dinner, Hannah checked on them with the same quiet efficiency. She didn't hover, didn't make a big deal about Noah's lack of verbal response. When the boy knocked over his water glass, an accident, the first truly clumsy thing Damien had seen him do in months, Hannah cleaned it up without commenting, just brought a new glass and a fresh napkin. "Sorry," Damien said. "Don't be," Hannah said. "Happens all the time." But the way she'd handled it, no fuss, no irritation, just matter-of-fact problem-solving, suggested she'd dealt with situations like this before. Not as a server, as something else. Near the end of the meal, while Noah was focused on his dessert, vanilla ice cream, plain, no toppings, Damien caught Hannah's attention. "Can I ask you something?" he said quietly. She looked wary. "Sure." "When I asked before about whether you had professional experience with children, you said not anymore. What did you mean by that?" Hannah's whole body tensed. "That's personal," she said. I know. I'm sorry. Damien struggled to find the right words. "My son doesn't connect with people. He hasn't spoken in 4 years. I've taken him to every specialist in the country, tried every therapy, every intervention. Nothing works. But you walked up to our table and something changed. I need to understand why." "It wasn't me," Hannah said firmly. "It was just timing, coincidence." "I don't believe in coincidence." "Then you should start." Hannah glanced around, checking that no one was listening. "Look, Mr. Vale." "Damien." "Mr. Vale," she continued, ignoring the correction. "I'm sorry your son is struggling. I really am, but I'm a waitress, that's all. I can't help you." "You already did." "I brought him mac and cheese. That's not a miracle." It felt like one. Something in Hannah's expression cracked. Just for a second, Damien saw past the professional mask to the person underneath. Someone exhausted, someone carrying weight she couldn't put down. "I have to check on my other tables," she said. "Excuse me." She left before he could say anything else. Damien sat there, frustrated and confused. He'd pushed too hard, obviously. Made her uncomfortable. But he couldn't shake the feeling that she knew something, understood something about Noah that she wasn't sharing. When the check came, Damien left a tip that was probably offensive in its size. $500 for a meal that cost maybe $200. He wasn't trying to buy her silence or her cooperation. He just wanted her to know that he saw her too, that her presence had mattered. They were gathering their things to leave when Noah did something extraordinary. He walked over to the wait station where Hannah was entering something into the computer, just walked right up, stood beside her, and waited. Damien froze, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. Hannah looked down, saw Noah standing there. "Hey," she said softly. "Did you need something?" Noah held out his hand. In it was a napkin, folded into a small, precise square. Hannah took it carefully. "Thank you," she said. "This is really nice." Noah just stood there for another moment, looking at her, really looking, eyes focused on her face. Then he turned and walked back to Damien. Hannah unfolded the napkin. Damien couldn't see what was inside from where he stood, but he saw her expression change. Saw something like pain cross her face, mixed with something else he couldn't name. She looked up, met Damien's eyes across the restaurant, and in that moment, he knew. She did have experience with children, professional experience, and whatever had happened, whatever had made her walk away from it, still hurt enough to make her flinch when a 6-year-old gave her a folded napkin. Damien walked Noah to the door, then stopped, turned back. Hannah was still at the wait station, still holding the napkin, staring at it like it might disappear. He made a decision he'd probably regret. He walked back to her slowly, giving her time to see him coming. "Hannah," he said, "I know you don't want to talk about your past. I get that. But whatever you did before this, whatever made you understand how to reach him, it worked. And I need that. He needs that. I can't—" "I'm not asking you to fix him," Damien said. "I'm not asking for therapy or treatment or any of that. I'm just asking if you'd be willing to spend some time with him. Let him get to know you. See if this—" He gestured at the space between them. "Whatever this is, if it's real." "It's not real," Hannah said. "It's just, he's a kid who liked the mac and cheese. He gave you a napkin. Kids give people things all the time." "Not this kid." Damien kept his voice steady, reasonable. "This kid hasn't voluntarily interacted with a stranger in 4 years, but he walked over to you, gave you something. That's not nothing." Hannah looked at the napkin in her hands. When she unfolded it fully, Damien saw what Noah had drawn, a simple stick figure, just lines and circles, the kind of drawing any 6-year-old might make. Except Noah didn't draw. Hadn't drawn in years, not since the silence had started. "I can't," Hannah whispered. "I'm sorry, but I can't." She folded the napkin carefully, like it was something precious, and put it in her apron pocket. Then she walked away, disappearing into the back of the restaurant. Damien stood there for a long moment, feeling like he'd lost something he'd never actually had. Then he went back to Noah, took his hand, and walked out into the rain. In the car, he sat behind the wheel without starting the engine, just listening to the rain hammer the roof. Noah was already absorbed in his own world, fingers tracing patterns on the window. Damien pulled out his phone, stared at it for a long moment. Then he opened his browser and searched Hannah Cole, Seattle psychologist. The results came back almost immediately. Dr. Hannah Cole, child psychology. Graduated top of her class from University of Washington. 3 years at Seattle Children's Hospital. Publications in peer-reviewed journals. A career that looked brilliant, promising, destined for major things. And then nothing. Just stopped. 3 years ago. No explanation, no forwarding address. Like she'd erased herself. Damien scrolled through the results, looking for something that might explain the gap. He found it in a news article dated 3.5 years back. Local child dies in tragic accident. Neighbors report Dr. Hannah Cole present at scene. He read the article twice, then a third time. A 7-year-old boy named Michael Torres had fallen from a second-story window while under supervision during a home visit. Dr. Cole had been there, had been the first to call 911, had ridden in the ambulance and stayed with the family at the hospital. The article was careful not to assign blame. Accident, it said. Tragedy. No charges filed. But Damien could read between the lines, could imagine what Hannah must have gone through, the guilt, the questions, the way people must have looked at her afterward. No wonder she'd walked away. No wonder she'd hidden herself in a job that required nothing more than bringing people food and clearing their plates. He sat there in the dark car, rain falling around them, and felt something shift in his chest. Understanding, maybe. Or just recognition that they were both people trying to carry things too heavy to lift alone. Noah hummed in the seat beside him. Damien started the car. "Let's go home, buddy." But as he drove through the wet Seattle streets, past buildings lit up like circuit boards and people hurrying through the rain, he knew he wasn't done. Couldn't be done. Because his son had drawn a picture for the first time in 4 years, and the woman who'd inspired it was hiding in a restaurant, serving food to rich people, trying to pretend she was someone else. Damien Vale had built an empire by seeing potential where others saw problems, by pushing through obstacles until he found solutions. He'd lost that fight when it came to Noah, had been beaten down by the sheer impossibility of reaching a child who wouldn't or couldn't be reached. But tonight, something had changed. Tonight, he'd seen proof that his son was still in there, still capable of connection, and he wasn't going to let that go. Not this time. Not when hope had finally, impossibly, shown up in the form of a shy waitress who understood his son in ways no expert ever had, even if she didn't want to admit it, even if she was running from the same thing she'd helped Damien find. He would find a way. He had to. Because Noah had given someone a napkin, and in Damien's world, that was nothing short of a miracle. Damien spent the next 3 days trying to convince himself to let it go. He had a company to run, after all. Kronos was spiraling toward a decision point, and Reynolds kept calling with updates that required immediate attention. The board meeting was in 2 weeks, and if Damien didn't have the votes locked down by then, 6 months of work would evaporate. He should have been focused on that. Should have been in his office 16 hours a day, making calls, reviewing documents, preparing presentations. Instead, he kept thinking about a folded napkin and a woman who'd looked at his son like he was worth waiting for. Noah had been different since that second dinner. Not dramatically different, no sudden speeches, no miraculous recovery. But small things had shifted. He'd started drawing again, mostly just stick figures on whatever paper he could find. The nanny, Mrs. Chen, had reported finding sketches on the backs of grocery lists, on the margins of newspapers, once even on the bathroom mirror in what appeared to be soap residue. "He's never done this before?" she'd asked Damien, holding up a piece of paper with 3 stick figures on it. One tall, one medium, one small. "Not in years," Damien had said, staring at the drawing. Family, maybe, or just random figures. He didn't know how to interpret it. Mrs. Chen had smiled, that careful smile people used when they thought you were being too hopeful. "Children go through phases. It's probably nothing specific." But it wasn't nothing. Damien knew his son well enough to recognize when something had changed in the boy's internal landscape. Noah was processing something, working through something. and it had started the night he'd given Hannah Cole a napkin with a stick figure drawn on it. On Thursday afternoon, Damien made a decision that would have horrified him if he'd stopped to think about it rationally. He canceled his 4 o'clock with the CFO, told his assistant he'd be out of the office for the rest of the day, and drove to Marchand. It was 3:30. Too early for the dinner service, too late for lunch. The restaurant was closed, chairs stacked on tables, someone mopping the floor. Damien knocked anyway. A kid, couldn't have been more than 20, opened the door, looking annoyed. "We're closed. Dinner starts at 5. "I'm looking for Hannah Cole," Damien said. "Is she here?" The kid's expression shifted to something more guarded. "Why?" "I just need to speak with her. It's important." "She doesn't start until 4:30. The kid started to close the door. Damien stuck his foot in it. Not aggressively, just enough to keep it from shutting. "Please, just tell her Damien Vale needs 5 minutes of her time. That's all I'm asking." The kid studied him for a long moment, making calculations. Finally, he sighed. "Wait here." He disappeared inside. Damien stood on the sidewalk, feeling ridiculous. Ambushing someone at their workplace was definitely crossing a line. He should leave, come back another time, and handle this like a normal person instead of a desperate stalker. But he didn't leave. 5 minutes later, Hannah appeared at the door. She was wearing jeans and a plain sweater instead of her server uniform, hair down instead of pulled back. She looked younger like this, and more tired. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't been sleeping well. "Mr. Vale?" she said. No warmth in her voice, but no hostility either. Just flat acknowledgement. "Damien," he corrected automatically. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you about Noah." "I already told you I can't help." "Just hear me out," Damien said. 5 minutes, please." Hannah glanced back into the restaurant, then stepped outside, letting the door close behind her. She crossed her arms, defensive body language. 5 minutes. Damien had rehearsed this conversation in his head a dozen times during the drive over, had prepared careful arguments, logical reasons why she should reconsider. But now that she was standing in front of him, all his prepared speeches evaporated. "He's drawing again," Damien said. "Noah. He hasn't drawn anything in 4 years, and now he's drawing constantly. Stick figures, mostly. And he's humming. These little tuneless melodies like he's thinking about something. Mrs. Chen, that's his nanny, she says he seems more present, more aware." Hannah's expression didn't change. "That's good. I'm glad." "It started after he met you," Damien continued. "After both dinners at Marchand. Whatever you did, whatever you said, it got through to him in a way nothing else has." "I didn't do anything," Hannah said. "I took his order and brought him food. That's it." "You gave him space," Damien said. "You didn't push him, didn't demand responses. You saw him as a person, not a problem. Any decent person would do the same thing. But they don't." Damien heard the frustration creeping into his voice, tried to rein it in. "I've taken him everywhere. Doctors, therapists, specialists who charge thousands of dollars an hour. They all treated him like a puzzle to solve. Like, if they just found the right combination of interventions, he'd magically start talking. But you didn't do that. You just talked to him like he was already whole." Hannah looked away, jaw tight. "Look, I appreciate that you think I helped, but whatever's happening with Noah, it's not because of me. Kids change on their own timeline. Maybe he's just ready." "Maybe," Damien said. "Or maybe you triggered something. Either way, I'd like you to spend more time with him. See if this progress continues. I'm not a therapist anymore." "I know. I looked you up." Hannah's eyes snapped back to his face, anger flashing there. "You what?" "I looked you up," Damien repeated. "Dr. Hannah Cole, child psychologist, Seattle Children's Hospital, published research on selective mutism in traumatized children." He paused. "And Michael Torres." All the color drained from Hannah's face. "You had no right." "You're right," Damien said quickly. "I shouldn't have. It was invasive and inappropriate, and I apologize. But I needed to understand why someone with your background was working as a waitress, why you'd walk away from a career you were clearly brilliant at." "It's none of your business," Hannah said, voice shaking. "You're right about that too." Damien took a breath. "But here's what is my business. My son is showing signs of progress for the first time in 4 years, and it started when he met you. So I'm asking, begging if that's what it takes, please consider spending time with him, not as his therapist, just as someone he responds to." "I can't," Hannah said. "I told you, I can't do that anymore." "Why not?" "Because—" She stopped, hands clenching into fists. "Because I already failed one child and I won't do that again." Her voice cracked on the last word. She turned away, but not before Damien saw tears in her eyes. "You didn't fail Michael Torres," Damien said quietly. "I read the reports. It was an accident. You weren't even in the room when it happened." "I was supposed to be watching him," Hannah said to the wall. "That was my job, to keep him safe while his mother was at work. And I got distracted by a phone call from the hospital for 5 minutes. 5 minutes, and he climbed out a window I didn't even know was unlocked. It wasn't your fault. You don't get to decide that." Hannah turned back to face him, and the pain in her expression made Damien's chest ache. "You weren't there. You didn't hear him hit the pavement. You didn't do CPR on a 7-year-old while waiting for the ambulance. You didn't have to tell his mother that her son was dead because you weren't paying attention." "Hannah, no," she said firmly. "You don't understand. You can't. Every child I see now, I see Michael. Every kid who needs help, I think, what if I fail them too? What if I miss something? What if 5 minutes is all it takes for everything to fall apart?" She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. Damien wanted to reach out, to comfort her somehow, but he knew it wouldn't help. Knew that some pain couldn't be touched without making it worse. "I'm sorry," he said. "I shouldn't have pushed. I'm desperate. I've watched my son disappear a little more every day for 4 years, and I don't know how to get him back. When I saw him respond to you, I thought maybe—" He stopped. "It doesn't matter. I was wrong to come here." He turned to leave. Made it 3 steps before Hannah spoke. "What would it involve?" she asked quietly. "If I said yes, what would you expect?" Damien turned back. Hannah was wiping her eyes with the heel of her hand, trying to compose herself. "Just time?" Damien said carefully. "Maybe an hour or 2 a week. At the park or a museum. Somewhere neutral. You wouldn't have to do anything specific. Just be present with him. And if he doesn't keep improving, if whatever this is was just a fluke, then we tried," Damien said. "And that's more than we've had in a long time." Hannah stood there for a long moment, arms wrapped around herself. Finally, she took a shaky breath. "1 month," she said. "I'll spend time with him for 1 month. After that, we reassess. And if at any point I think this isn't working, or if I think I'm doing more harm than good, I walk away. No questions, no arguments." Relief flooded through Damien so intensely he felt dizzy. "Done. Whatever you need." "I don't want money," Hannah said quickly. "This isn't a job. This is—" She paused, searching for words. "This is me trying to see if I can still do something I used to be good at. That's all." "Okay," Damien said. "No money. And you don't tell Noah I used to be a psychologist. He doesn't need that pressure. I'm just someone who wants to spend time with him." "Agreed." Hannah nodded slowly, like she was trying to convince herself this was a good idea. "When do you want to start?" "Is Saturday too soon?" "Saturday works. I have the day off." She pulled out her phone. "Give me your number." They exchanged information. Damien felt like he was in a dream, like at any moment Hannah would change her mind and disappear back into the restaurant. "Discovery Park," Hannah said, typing something into her phone. 10 in the morning, the main parking lot by the lighthouse. We'll walk the beach trail." "Perfect," Damien said. "Thank you. Seriously, thank you." Hannah met his eyes. "Don't thank me yet. I might be terrible at this now." "I doubt that." "You shouldn't." She put her phone away. "I need to get ready for my shift. I'll see you Saturday." She went back inside, leaving Damien standing on the sidewalk, feeling like he'd just negotiated the most important deal of his life. Saturday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of Seattle weather that couldn't decide if it wanted to rain or just threatened to. Damien woke up early, made breakfast, pancakes that Noah ignored as usual, and tried not to let his nervousness show. "We're meeting a friend today," Damien said as Noah pushed pancake pieces around his plate. "Remember Hannah from the restaurant? We're going to go to the park with her." Noah didn't react. Damien hadn't expected him to. They arrived at Discovery Park at 9:50. Hannah was already there, sitting on a bench near the parking lot, wearing a heavy jacket and boots that looked like they'd seen a lot of use. When she saw them approaching, she stood up, and Damien saw the same nervousness in her posture that he felt. "Hey," she said when they reached her. Then, crouching down to Noah's level, "Hi, Noah. It's nice to see you again." Noah looked at her. Not past her, not through her, at her. His fingers twitched in that pattern he did when he was thinking. "I thought we could walk down to the beach," Hannah continued, voice gentle. "There's a good trail. We might see some birds. Does that sound okay?" Noah didn't respond, but he didn't pull away either when Hannah stood up and started walking. Just fell into step beside her, with Damien trailing slightly behind. The trail wound through trees, evergreens that dripped with moisture even though it wasn't actively raining. Hannah walked slowly, not talking, just letting Noah set the pace. Every so often she'd point out something, a bird, an interesting rock, a patch of moss. But she didn't demand acknowledgement, just offered observations and moved on. Damien watched his son walk beside her, noticed the way Noah's shoulders had relaxed slightly, the way his steps seemed less mechanical. It was subtle, but it was there. They reached the beach, rocky, gray, stretching out toward water that looked like hammered pewter. Hannah found a good spot and sat down on a large driftwood log. Noah immediately began picking up rocks, examining them, sorting them into piles based on criteria only he understood. "You can sit," Hannah said to Damien. "This might take a while." Damien sat on the far end of the log, giving them space. Hannah pulled out a small sketchbook and a pencil from her jacket pocket. "I like to draw when I'm at the beach," she said to Noah, not expecting a response. "Helps me notice things I might miss otherwise." She started sketching, quick, loose lines capturing the curve of the shoreline, the shape of rocks. Noah glanced over occasionally, watching her hand move across the paper. After about 10 minutes, he approached her with a rock. Flat, smooth, dark gray, with a white stripe running through it. Hannah looked at it seriously. "That's a really good one," she said. "Perfect skipping stone. Want to try skipping it?" Noah considered this. Then, to Damien's surprise, he nodded. Just a small movement, barely perceptible, but definitely a nod. Hannah stood up, walked to the water's edge. She showed Noah how to hold the stone, how to flick his wrist. "It's all in the angle," she explained. "You want it flat, like this. See?" She demonstrated with a stone of her own. It skipped twice before sinking. Noah tried. His rock plunked straight down. No skips. "Good first try," Hannah said. "Takes practice. Want to try another?" They spent the next 20 minutes just throwing rocks. Hannah didn't push for anything more, didn't try to turn it into a lesson or a therapy session. Just threw rocks with the 6-year-old on a gray beach while seagulls circled overhead. Damien sat on the log and felt something unknot in his chest. This was what he'd forgotten existed. Simple, uncomplicated time with his son. No agenda, no expectations, just being. Eventually, Noah wandered back to his piles, began rearranging them. Hannah returned to her log, to her sketchbook. "How often did you do this?" Damien asked quietly. "Before, with your patients." Hannah didn't look up from her drawing. "Most of my sessions were in an office, but sometimes we'd go outside, to the park, or the zoo, or wherever the kid felt comfortable. The setting mattered less than the presence." The presence? Being fully there, not trying to fix anything, not working towards some predetermined goal, just showing up and paying attention. She added a few lines to her sketch. "Kids can tell when you're faking it, when you're performing care instead of actually caring. They shut down." "Is that what happened with the other therapists? They were performing?" "Maybe. Or maybe they were just doing their jobs, following protocols, implementing strategies." Hannah's pencil paused. "There's nothing wrong with that. It works for a lot of kids, but some children need something different. They need someone who's willing to meet them where they are instead of dragging them to where they're supposed to be." Damien thought about all the specialists he'd hired, the behavioral plans, the reward systems, the structured interventions. How much of that had been about actually helping Noah, and how much had been about making Damien feel like he was doing something? "I've been going about this all wrong," he said. "You've been trying everything you knew how to try," Hannah corrected. "That's not wrong. That's love." The word hung in the air between them. Love. Such a simple thing, But Damien realized he hadn't thought of his efforts in those terms. He'd been thinking about solutions, about fixing, about results, not about what it meant to simply love his son exactly as he was, silence and all. Noah made a sound, not a word, but a hum that rose and fell with a kind of melody to it. The same tuneless song he'd been humming since that first night at Marchand. Hannah looked over at him, a small smile crossing her face. "I know that one," she said. She started humming along, matching Noah's melody. The boy's head came up, eyes widening slightly. She kept humming, not looking directly at him, just sitting there on the log adding harmony to his tune. Noah's humming grew a little louder, a little more confident. They hummed together for maybe 30 seconds. Then Noah stopped abruptly, went back to his rocks. But something had shifted. Damien could see it in the way his son's hands moved, less rigid, more fluid, like something had loosened. They stayed at the beach for another hour. Hannah drew, Noah sorted rocks and occasionally wandered over to look at her sketchbook. Damien just watched and tried to remember how to breathe normally. When the wind picked up and the temperature dropped, Hannah stood and stretched. "Probably time to head back," she said. "It's getting cold." The walk back to the parking lot was quieter. Noah seemed tired, but it was a good tired, settled maybe. When they reached Hannah's car, an old Honda that had definitely seen better days, she turned to Damien. "Same time next Saturday?" she asked. "You want to do this again?" "I said 1 month," Hannah reminded him. "That's 4 more sessions, unless you think—" "No," Damien said quickly. "No, this was good, really good. Same time next Saturday." Hannah nodded, then looked at Noah. "Thanks for showing me your rocks today, and for humming with me. That was nice." Noah didn't respond, but his fingers did that twitching thing again. Communication, maybe, or just processing. They drove home in silence. Noah fell asleep in the back seat almost immediately, face pressed against the window. Damien kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror, looking for signs of whatever shift he'd sensed at the beach. Mrs. Chen was waiting when they got home, already preparing lunch. "How was the park?" she asked. "Good," Damien said. "Really good." She looked at him skeptically. Mrs. Chen had been with them for 2 years, had weathered enough false hopes to know better than to get excited. "He do anything different?" "He hummed with someone else, like a duet." Mrs. Chen's expression softened. "That's something." "Yeah," Damien said, watching Noah wander into the living room and immediately pick up a piece of paper and a crayon. "That's something." The second Saturday was warmer. Hannah met them at the same spot, same bench, but this time she had a bag with her. "I brought some supplies," she explained as they started down the trail. "Nothing fancy. Just stuff to do while we're at the beach." When they reached their spot, the same driftwood log, the same stretch of rocky shore, she pulled out sidewalk chalk, bubbles, and a small bucket with some paintbrushes. Noah's eyes went immediately to the bubbles. "Want to try?" Hannah asked, holding out the bottle. Noah took it, carefully unscrewed the cap, pulled out the wand, blew. Nothing happened. He tried again, blowing harder. "Gentle," Hannah said. "Like this." She demonstrated with her own bubble wand, producing a stream of iridescent spheres that floated out over the water. Noah watched them drift, mesmerized, then tried again, softer this time. A single perfect bubble emerged, wobbling in the breeze before popping. He looked at Hannah, and for just a second, Damien saw something that might have been pride in his son's expression. "Perfect," Hannah said. "You got it." They blew bubbles for 20 minutes. Hannah didn't try to turn it into anything more than what it was, a kid playing on a beach. But Damien noticed the way she paid attention to everything Noah did, the way he held the wand, which bubbles he focused on when he seemed frustrated versus engaged. She was assessing him, not obviously, not clinically, but her background showed through in the careful way she observed, the mental notes she was clearly taking. When Noah got bored with bubbles, Hannah pulled out the chalk. "Want to draw on this rock?" she asked, pointing to a large flat stone. Noah considered, then nodded. They spent the next hour decorating the rock. Hannah drew simple shapes, circles, stars, waves, and Noah filled them in with color. Or didn't. Sometimes he just drew lines over her shapes, obliterating them. Hannah never commented, never tried to correct or guide. Just kept adding new shapes for him to respond to however he wanted. Damien found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years. There was something about watching his son engage in simple play, without pressure or expectations, that made him remember what childhood was supposed to look like. Before the silence, before the specialists and the worry and the constant feeling of failing. "Can I ask you something?" Hannah said during a moment when Noah was absorbed in his chalk work. "Sure," Damien said. "What happened?" "With his mother." Damien should have expected the question, should have prepared an answer, but it still hit him like a punch to the gut. "She left," he said simply. 3 months after he stopped talking, said she couldn't handle it anymore, couldn't handle him. Hannah's jaw tightened. "She just left?" "Sent me divorce papers from her lawyer, signed over full custody, waived all parental rights. I haven't heard from her since." Damien stared out at the water. "Haven't tried to reach her either. If she doesn't want to be his mother, I'm not going to force her." "That's—" Hannah stopped, clearly trying to find words that weren't just angry. "That must have been incredibly hard, for both of you." "Noah doesn't remember her," Damien said. "Or if he does, he's never shown it. She'd already started checking out before she actually left, working late, taking trips, finding excuses not to be home. I think she blamed him for the silence, like it was something he chose to punish her with." "Kids don't choose selective mutism," Hannah said quietly. "It's a trauma response, a protective mechanism." "I know that now. Didn't then." Damien watched Noah add purple lines to the rock. "The doctors think it was the combination of factors. Her pulling away emotionally, stress in the household, maybe something genetic we don't know about. No single cause, just a perfect storm of things that made talking feel impossible." "And you've been doing this alone ever since?" "I have Mrs. Chen, and my mother helps sometimes, though mostly she just criticizes my parenting choices and suggests boarding schools." Hannah looked at him, really looked at him, and Damien felt seen in a way he hadn't in a long time. Not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, just as a tired father trying his best and constantly falling short. "You're doing better than you think," Hannah said. "How would you know?" "Because Noah is here. He's present, he's engaging, he's trying. Kids who aren't loved don't try. They just shut down completely." Damien felt his throat tighten. "Doesn't feel like enough." "It never does," Hannah said. "Love never feels like enough when you're in the middle of it." They sat in silence for a while after that. Noah finished with the chalk, wandered down to the water's edge, stood there watching waves lap against rocks. "He's different today," Hannah observed. "More relaxed, willing to try new things." "Is that progress?" "It's engagement. Whether it's progress depends on what you're measuring." "I'm measuring whether he'll ever talk again." Hannah was quiet for a moment. Then, "What if he doesn't? What if this is who he is?" The question hit Damien harder than he expected. "Then I failed him." "Why?" "Because there's a whole world out there he can't access without language. School, friends, a career someday. How is he supposed to navigate any of that without speaking?" "Plenty of nonverbal people live full lives," Hannah said. "There are other forms of communication. Sign language, writing, technology. If Noah never speaks another word, it doesn't mean his life is over." "You don't really believe that." "I do, actually." Hannah pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapped her arms around them. "I've worked with kids who never developed verbal language. Some of them were the most expressive, creative, joyful children I've ever met. They just communicated differently." "But you still tried to get them to talk." "Sometimes, when I thought it would help them navigate a world that isn't built for nonverbal communication. But the goal was never to fix them. It was to give them more tools for connection. There's a difference." Damien thought about that. All the therapies, all the interventions, had any of them been about giving Noah tools? Or had they all been about making him normal, about forcing him into a mold that would make Damien's life easier? "I don't know how to parent him if he stays like this," Damien admitted. "I don't know how to protect him from a world that won't understand." "You do what you're doing now," Hannah said. "You show up. You pay attention. You love him exactly as he is while still helping him grow into whoever he's meant to become. That's all any parent can do." Noah called out then. Not words, but a sound. A clear, intentional vocalization that made both adults look over. He was pointing at something in the water, excited about whatever he'd seen. Hannah stood up, walked over to him. Damien followed. "What did you see?" Hannah asked, crouching beside him. Noah pointed again. There, just visible in the shallow water, was a small crab scuttling between rocks. "Oh, wow," Hannah said. "That's a good find. Purple shore crab, I think. See the purple on its shell?" Noah leaned forward, fascinated. The crab stopped moving, sensing danger. They all held very still. "If we're quiet," Hannah whispered, "we might see more." They stood there for 5 minutes, barely breathing, watching the crab navigate its rocky territory. Damien couldn't remember the last time he'd just stopped like this. Stopped working, stopped thinking, stopped trying to fix things. Just stood still and watched a crab. When it finally scuttled away into deeper water, Noah made another sound. Disappointed, maybe. Or just processing. "We can come back next week," Hannah said. "Look for more crabs, if you want." Noah looked at her, looked at Damien, then nodded. Clear, unmistakable. Yes. Damien felt tears prick his eyes. Such a small thing, a nod. But it was his son making a choice, expressing a preference about the future, something he hadn't done in so long Damien had forgotten it was possible. The third Saturday, it rained. Not hard, just a steady drizzle that made everything gray and wet. Damien texted Hannah offering to reschedule. Her response came back immediately. "Unless Noah minds getting wet, I'm still good to go." So they went. Hannah was waiting under an umbrella, wearing rain boots and a jacket that looked waterproof. She'd brought an extra umbrella for Noah. "Some of the best beach days are rainy days," she said as they started down the trail. "Everything looks different. Sharper, somehow." She was right. The rain made colors more vivid, the green of moss, the dark gray of wet rocks, the silver of water merging with sky. They walked slowly, letting Noah splash in puddles when he wanted, stopping to examine rain-soaked leaves and dripping branches. At the beach, Hannah pulled out a plastic container. "I brought modeling clay. It won't dry out in the rain. Want to make something?" She sat down on a fallen log that was mostly protected by overhanging trees and started working the clay. Noah watched for a moment, then sat beside her. She handed him a piece. "You can make whatever you want," she said. "Or nothing. Sometimes I just like how it feels in my hands." Noah squished the clay between his fingers, testing its texture. Then he started rolling it, forming it into shapes. Nothing specific at first, just experimentation. Hannah worked on her own creation, a simple bird, recognizable but not perfect. "I'm not very good at this," she admitted, "but it's fun anyway." Damien sat under his own umbrella, watching them. There was something peaceful about the rain, about the way it created a bubble of privacy around them, like they were the only people in the world. Noah made something that might have been a fish, or a boat, or just an abstract shape. He held it up to show Hannah. "I love it," she said. "The texture is really interesting. See how you made these grooves here?" Noah studied his creation, then very deliberately pressed his thumb into it, making a deeper impression. He looked at Hannah, checking her reaction. "Even better," she said. "Now it has your mark on it. No one else could have made it exactly like that." Noah's shoulders relaxed. He went back to working the clay, adding more marks, more impressions, making it uniquely his. They stayed for over an hour, just making things out of clay in the rain. When Noah's fingers got too cold, Hannah suggested they walk. They explored a different part of the beach, found tide pools that the rain was filling with fresh water. "Look," Hannah said, pointing. "Anemones." Noah crouched down, peering at the strange creatures that looked more like plants than animals. Hannah explained how they worked, how they pulled food from the water, how they could sense vibrations. "They're survivors," she said. "The tide goes out, leaves them exposed to air and sun and predators. But they just close up, wait it out. When the water comes back, they open again, like nothing bad ever happened." Damien wondered if she was talking about the anemones or about something else. About children who'd been hurt and learned to protect themselves. About people who'd survived trauma and found ways to open again. About herself, maybe. On the walk back, Noah stayed close to Hannah. Not holding her hand, that would have been too much, too fast, but walking beside her, matching her pace. When they reached the parking lot, he did something that made Damien's heart stop. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the clay fishboat thing he'd made, and handed it to Hannah. "For me?" she asked. Noah nodded. "Thank you," Hannah said, taking it carefully. "I'm going to keep this somewhere safe. Maybe on my kitchen windowsill, where I can see it every morning. Noah's lips curved. Not quite a smile, but close. Closer than Damien had seen in years. In the car on the way home, Damien couldn't stop thinking about it. About the way Noah had made something specifically to give away. About the intentionality of it, the connection it implied. His phone buzzed. A text from Hannah. "He's doing really well. You should be proud." Damien typed back, "I am. Thank you for seeing him." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "He's easy to see. He's not as hidden as he thinks." The 4th Saturday was sunny. Actually, genuinely sunny, the kind of winter sun that made Seattle feel possible instead of just tolerable. Hannah was early, sitting on their usual bench with 2 coffee cups beside her. "I wasn't sure how you take it," she said when Damien arrived, "so I got it black. There's cream and sugar in the bag if you need it." "Black's fine," Damien said, taking the cup. It was still hot, warming his hands. "You didn't have to do this. I wanted to." Hannah looked around. "Where's Noah?" "Bathroom. Mrs. Chen's bringing him. They're running a few minutes behind." It was the first time Damien had been alone with Hannah since that afternoon outside the restaurant. He searched for something to say, something that wouldn't sound desperate or inappropriate. "How's work?" he asked. Immediately felt stupid. "How's work?" Like they were colleagues making small talk. But Hannah just smiled. "Fine, same as always. People eat food. I bring it to them. They leave tips or they don't." "You could do something else," Damien said. "With your background, I mean. You could go back to psychology, or teaching, or research, or—" "I know what I could do," Hannah interrupted gently. "I choose not to." "Because of Michael Torres." Hannah's expression closed off. "Yes, but you're doing this with Noah. This is different. How?" Hannah stared at her coffee cup. "Because I'm not responsible for Noah. Not really. If something goes wrong, if I fail him somehow, it's not my fault. I'm just someone spending time with him. That's all." "You don't believe that," Damien said. "Maybe not. But it's what I need to tell myself to keep doing this." She looked at him. "Do you know what it's like to carry someone's death around? To know that a child died because you weren't paying attention?" "It was an accident. I know it was an accident," Hannah said. "Everyone told me that. The police, the hospital, his mother, eventually. But knowing something intellectually doesn't change how it feels. Doesn't change the fact that I see his face every time I close my eyes. Doesn't change the guilt." Damien didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to respond to pain that raw. Mrs. Chen arrived with Noah before the silence could stretch too long. The boy ran, over to Hannah when he saw her. "Hey you," Hannah said, standing up. "Ready for an adventure?" Noah nodded enthusiastically. They walked to the beach, but this time Hannah led them to a different spot. A small cove with smoother sand, more protected from the wind. "I thought we'd try something new today," she said, pulling out a kite from her bag. Nothing fancy, just a simple diamond shape and bright colors. "Ever flown a kite before?" Noah shook his head. "Me neither," Hannah admitted. "Well, not since I was a kid. So we'll figure it out together." It took 20 minutes of trial and error before they got it airborne. Noah would run with the string while Hannah managed the kite. Then they'd switch. It kept crashing over and over, but Noah didn't seem frustrated. If anything, he seemed delighted by the chaos of it. When they finally got it to stay up for more than 30 seconds, Noah made a sound. High-pitched, joyful. Not a word, but unmistakably happy. Hannah whooped in response, throwing her hands up. "We did it! We got it flying!" Noah was grinning. Actually grinning. His whole face transformed by delight. Damien stood back and watched them, this woman and his son, celebrating a kite that was probably going to crash again in 10 seconds. And he realized something that should have been obvious from the beginning. He wasn't just grateful to Hannah for helping Noah. He was falling for her. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, in a quiet way he kept noticing more of. Not because she was kind, though her kindness was remarkable. But because she'd given him back something he thought was lost forever. Hope. The possibility that his son could be happy, could connect, could find joy in small things like flying kites on sunny winter mornings. And maybe, buried deep beneath his gratitude and his desperate need for her to keep helping Noah, there was something more selfish. something that wanted her to stay, not just for his son's sake, but for his own. The kite crashed. Noah ran to retrieve it, Hannah following behind with a laugh. Damien pulled out his phone, took a picture without thinking. The two of them standing in the sand, sun behind them, kite string tangled at their feet. Later, much later, he'd look at that photo and remember this as the moment everything changed. The moment he stopped seeing Hannah as just someone who could help his son and started seeing her as someone who might save them both. But for now, he just put his phone away and walked down to help them untangle the string. The month ended and Hannah didn't leave. They never discussed it explicitly. The 4-week trial period came and went, and the following Saturday, Hannah simply showed up at Discovery Park like she had every weekend before. Damien didn't mention it, didn't want to risk breaking whatever spell kept her coming back. He just nodded when she suggested they try the nature center this time, let himself believe this could last. Noah's progress was undeniable now. Not dramatic. He still wasn't speaking, but the small changes had accumulated into something significant. He made eye contact more often. He initiated interaction, bringing Hannah things he'd found or created. He laughed sometimes, a sound so unexpected the first time Damien heard it that he'd actually stopped mid-sentence and just stared at his son. Mrs. Chen noticed too. He's different lately, she said one evening after Noah had gone to bed. Lighter, like something heavy got lifted off him. Hannah's been good for him, Damien said. Mrs. Chen gave him a look that suggested she thought Hannah was being good for more than just Noah. But she was too polite to say it out loud. The truth was, Damien looked forward to Saturdays with an intensity that would have embarrassed him if he'd admitted it to anyone. He told himself it was about Noah, about seeing his son happy. But he knew better. He noticed things about Hannah now, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, how her laugh started quiet and then surprised her into something louder, the careful way she chose her words like she was afraid of using the wrong ones. He wanted to know more, wanted to understand the person beneath the careful exterior she maintained. But every time he tried to ask something personal, she deflected, changed the subject, made a joke, found a reason to focus on Noah instead. It was Marcus who finally called him out on it. They were having lunch at some overpriced place downtown, supposedly to discuss the Kronos acquisition, which had finally gone through. But Marcus had other priorities. So when are you going to ask her out? Marcus said, not bothering with subtlety. Damien nearly choked on his water. What? Hannah, the waitress. When are you asking her out? That's not what this is. Please, Marcus said. I've known you since college. I've seen you close billion-dollar deals without blinking. But you get nervous before Saturday mornings at the park. You check your phone constantly waiting for her texts. Last week, you spent 20 minutes talking about how she taught Noah to identify different types of seaweed. 20 minutes, Damien, about seaweed. She's helping my son. And you're falling for her. Damien wanted to deny it, should have denied it. Instead, he just sat there, fork halfway to his mouth, feeling exposed. It's complicated, he finally said. It's only complicated if you make it complicated. She works for me, kind of. I mean, she's spending time with Noah. There's a power dynamic there that makes asking her out inappropriate. You're not paying her, Marcus pointed out. She's doing this because she wants to. Exactly. She's doing this for Noah, not for me. If I ask her out and she says no, it makes everything awkward, and she might stop coming around. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying him. You're scared. I'm being practical. You're scared, Marcus repeated. The great Damien Vale, who bet everything on a startup that everyone said would fail, who went head-to-head with venture capitalists twice his age, is scared of asking out a woman he clearly has feelings for. I have a kid, Damien said. A kid with significant needs. Any relationship I have affects him too. I can't be reckless about this. I'm not saying be reckless. I'm saying be honest, with her and with yourself. Marcus paused. When's the last time you were happy? Actually happy, not just satisfied or accomplished? Damien thought about it. Saturday, he said quietly. At the beach. Hannah found this tide pool and spent an hour showing Noah all the different creatures in it. Sea stars, anemones, these tiny fish, and Noah was just present, fully there. And Hannah was laughing at something, I don't even remember what, and the sun was hitting her face, and she looked. He stopped, realizing what he was revealing. Marcus grinned. You got it bad, man. Shut up. I'm serious. I'm happy for you. You deserve this. I don't even know if she's interested, Damien said. She's never indicated. She's very professional about everything. Then find out. Create an opportunity to see her outside of the Noah context. Ask her to dinner, coffee, anything. And if she says no, then at least you know. Marcus signaled for the check. But I think you're underestimating how much she might already care about you, about both of you. The conversation stuck with Damien all week. He played out scenarios in his head, imagined different ways he could approach the subject. All of them felt wrong, too forward, or too casual, or too transparent. Then his mother called and inadvertently solved his problem while creating a much bigger one. I need you at the Winter Gala, Catherine Vale announced without preamble. The one I've been planning for 6 months, the one you promised you'd attend. Damien rubbed his temples. He'd completely forgotten about the gala. His mother threw one every December, a massive charity event that was more about social positioning than actual charity. He usually made an appearance, wrote a large check, and left as soon as was polite. I'll be there, he said. Good. And bring someone. You showing up alone makes people talk. I don't care what people say. Well, I do. My friends are starting to think you're a hermit, or worse, that you can't maintain a relationship. I have a 6-year-old son who doesn't speak. That tends to limit my dating life. All the more reason to make an effort, Catherine said. Find someone suitable. That nice lawyer from the Peterson firm, perhaps. Or what about Marcus's sister? She's divorced now, I heard. I'm not bringing a date to make your friends stop gossiping. Fine. Then bring Noah. Damien's stomach dropped. Absolutely not. He's 6 years old. It's time he learned how to function in social situations. He doesn't do well in crowds, you know that. He'll never do well if you keep hiding him away. Bring him. Let him see what his family's about. It's important. Catherine hung up before Damien could argue further. He sat there staring at his phone, dread settling in his chest. The gala would be a nightmare for Noah. Hundreds of people, loud music, expectations for social interaction. The boy would shut down completely, and Damien would spend the whole evening managing his anxiety while his mother made passive-aggressive comments about his parenting. Unless. The thought occurred to him before he could stop it. Hannah. If Hannah came, if she was there to help Noah navigate the evening, it might be tolerable. She knew how to read his signals, how to create calm in chaos. She could help. And it would give Damien a legitimate reason to ask her to spend time with him outside their Saturday routine. He texted before he could talk himself out of it. I have a favor to ask. Could we meet for coffee sometime this week? Without Noah? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. Is everything okay? Yes, just need to discuss something. Tomorrow afternoon? I work until 4. 4:30 then? There's a place near Marchand. Okay. Damien stared at the single word, heart racing like a teenager who'd just secured his first date. Except this wasn't a date. This was a business proposition, a favor, nothing more. He spent the next day distracted, missing details in meetings, having to ask people to repeat themselves. Reynolds noticed. You feeling all right? His CFO asked after Damien lost track of what they were discussing for the 3rd time. Fine. Just tired. You're never tired. You run on spite and caffeine. Damien laughed despite himself. Maybe I'm getting old. You're 32. That's not old. That's early midlife crisis territory. You thinking about buying a sports car, getting a tattoo? I have a meeting, Damien said, standing up. We'll finish this tomorrow. He left the office at 4, drove to the coffee shop, arrived 15 minutes early, sat in his car rehearsing what he'd say. Just a straightforward request. Nothing weird about it. People asked friends for favors all the time. Except Hannah wasn't exactly his friend. She was, what? His son's unofficial therapist? A woman he saw once a week who was slowly becoming essential to his life in ways he couldn't quite name? Hannah arrived exactly at 4:30, wearing jeans and a sweater that looked soft, her hair down. She looked different outside the context of the beach or the restaurant, more like a regular person and less like the carefully controlled professional she usually presented. Hey, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. What's going on? Damien had planned this. had a whole speech prepared. Instead, what came out was, "My mother's throwing a charity gala in 2 weeks, and she's insisting I bring Noah. And I know it's going to be a disaster, but I can't say no without her making it a whole thing. And I was wondering if maybe you'd consider coming with us to help Noah manage the situation, because he responds to you in ways he doesn't with anyone else. And I know this is outside our normal arrangement, but I'd pay you for your time, obviously, and—" "Breathe," Hannah interrupted gently. Damien stopped, realized he'd said all of that in one continuous stream without pausing for air. "Sorry," he said. "That came out wrong. You want me to come to a gala with you and Noah?" "To help Noah," Damien clarified. "It's going to be overwhelming for him. Lots of people, noise, expectations. But if you're there, he might do better." Hannah looked at him for a long moment. "You don't need to pay me." "I do, though. This is beyond our Saturday arrangement. This is asking you to give up an evening, get dressed up, deal with my mother's friends." "Your mother's friends?" Hannah's eyebrows rose. Damien grimaced. "Yeah, Catherine Vale's annual winter gala. Very fancy, very expensive, very full of people who think their money makes them interesting. And you want me to go to this?" "I want Noah to have support. You're the only person I trust to provide that." Damien paused. "Also, if I'm being honest, I could use someone in my corner too. These events are exhausting." Something shifted in Hannah's expression. "Damien, I know it's a lot to ask," he said quickly. "And if you're not comfortable with it, I completely understand. I'll figure something else out. Maybe Mrs. Chen could come, or I could try to convince my mother that Noah isn't ready." "When is it?" Hannah asked. "Saturday. 2 weeks from tomorrow. Evening starts at 7. "I'd need something to wear." Damien blinked. "You're saying yes?" "I'm saying I need something to wear. I'm assuming this isn't a jeans kind of event." "No, definitely not." Damien's mind raced. "I can have someone send you options. What size?" "I can find my own dress," Hannah said. "But I'll need to know the dress code. Cocktail, formal?" "Formal. Very formal. My mother likes people to dress like they're attending a royal wedding." Hannah nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll figure something out." "You're sure? You really don't have to do this." "I know I don't have to." Hannah wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, not meeting his eyes. "But Noah's made so much progress. It would be a shame to throw him into a situation like that without support. So yes, I'll come." Relief flooded through Damien so intensely he felt lightheaded. "Thank you, seriously, thank you. I'll have a car pick you up. I can drive myself." "The parking is complicated. Please, let me send a car. It'll make everything easier." Hannah considered, then nodded. "Okay, send me the details." They sat in silence for a moment. Damien wanted to say more, to extend this conversation beyond the logistics of the gala, but he didn't know how, didn't know what was appropriate. Hannah solved the problem by standing up. "I should go. I have some errands to run before my shift tomorrow." "Right, of course." Damien stood too. "Saturday then, our normal beach time?" "I'll be there." She left, and Damien sat back down, feeling like he'd just navigated a negotiation far more complex than any business deal. She'd said yes. She was coming to the gala. With him. And Noah, obviously. But still. Marcus was going to be insufferable about this. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation and anxiety. Damien arranged for a car service, sent Hannah all the details about timing and location, offered 3 more times to help with her dress before she told him firmly that she had it handled. Noah seemed excited when Damien explained they were going to a party and Hannah would be there. He didn't say anything, still hadn't spoken a word, but he smiled in that small way that meant he was happy about something. The night of the gala arrived cold and clear. Damien, dressed in his tuxedo, helped Noah into the small suit Mrs. Chen had picked out. The boy looked uncomfortable in the formal clothes, kept tugging at his collar. "I know, buddy," Damien said, adjusting Noah's bow tie. "I don't like these things either, but Hannah's going to be there, and we'll leave as soon as we can. Deal?" Noah nodded. The gala was being held at the Fairmont Olympic, the kind of historic hotel that charged by the syllable when you made reservations. Damien's mother had taken over the entire ballroom, decorated it like a winter palace with ice sculptures and white flowers and lighting that probably cost more than most people's cars. Catherine Vale stood near the entrance greeting guests, wearing a gown that looked like it cost more than Hannah made in 6 months. She spotted Damien and Noah immediately. "Finally," she said, air-kissing Damien's cheek. "I was beginning to think you'd bail." Her eyes landed on Noah. "And here's my grandson. Don't you look handsome?" Noah shrank back against Damien's leg. "He's a little overwhelmed," Damien said. "It's a lot of people." "He'll adjust." Catherine turned to greet someone else, dismissing them. Damien found a corner of the ballroom that was relatively quiet, let Noah sit in a chair while they waited for Hannah. The room was already filling up, men in tuxedos, women in gowns that sparkled under the chandeliers, everyone holding champagne flutes and making the kind of small talk that meant nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from the car service. "Arriving in 5 minutes." Damien felt his pulse quicken. He checked the time, 7:45, late enough that most guests had already arrived, which meant Hannah's entrance would be noticed. He hadn't considered that, hadn't thought about how his mother's friends would dissect and analyze anyone new he brought to an event like this. "Mr. Vale?" Damien turned. Jackson Pemberton, an investor he'd worked with years ago, approached with his wife. "Damien, good to see you," Jackson said, shaking his hand. "And who's this young man?" "My son, Noah." Jackson's wife, Damien couldn't remember her name, crouched down in front of Noah with the kind of exaggerated enthusiasm people used with children they didn't actually like. "Well, aren't you adorable? What's your name, sweetie?" Noah stared at her, silent. "He doesn't talk," Damien said, more sharply than he intended. "Oh." The woman straightened up, smile faltering. "I'm sorry, I didn't—" "It's fine," Damien said, already regretting his tone. "He's just shy around new people." They made awkward small talk for another minute before the Pembertons excused themselves. Damien watched them walk away, saw Jackson's wife lean close to whisper something to her husband. He could imagine what she was saying. Poor thing. What a shame. "Did you know about the son?" His phone buzzed again. Guest arrived. Damien looked toward the entrance and forgot how to breathe. Hannah stood in the doorway, and she was stunning. Not in the overdone, trying too hard way of most women here. Her dress was simple, deep blue, elegant, nothing flashy, but it fit her perfectly. She'd done something different with her hair, left it down but styled so it framed her face. She looked nervous and beautiful and completely out of place among the social climbers and trust fund beneficiaries. She spotted him, relief crossing her face as she started making her way through the crowd. "Sorry I'm late," she said when she reached them. "Traffic was worse than I expected." "You're fine. You look—" Damien stopped himself before he said something inappropriate. "You look nice." "Thanks." Hannah looked down at Noah, who was staring at her with wide eyes. "Hey, Noah. What do you think? Too fancy?" Noah shook his head quickly. Then he did something that made Damien's heart clench. He stood up and took Hannah's hand, just reached out and grabbed it, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Hannah's eyes went wide. She looked at Damien, question written all over her face. "He doesn't usually—" Damien started, then stopped. "That's new." "Is it okay?" Hannah asked quietly. "Should I—" "It's more than okay," Damien said. "It's perfect." They stood there for a moment, this strange little unit in the middle of a ballroom full of strangers. Then Catherine descended. "Damien, you didn't tell me you were bringing someone." His mother's eyes raked over Hannah, assessing everything from her dress to her jewelry to the way she stood. "And you are?" "Hannah Cole," Hannah said, extending her free hand. She kept the other one firmly in Noah's grasp. "It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Vale." "Ms. Vale, actually. I kept my maiden name." Catherine shook Hannah's hand briefly. "And how do you know my son?" "I've been spending time with Noah," Hannah said, "helping him with some social development." It was a careful answer, not quite a lie, but not the whole truth either. Catherine's eyes narrowed slightly. "Are you a therapist?" "I was. I work in food service now." "How interesting." Catherine's tone suggested it was anything but interesting. "Well, make yourselves comfortable. Dinner will be served shortly." She drifted away to greet other guests. Damien let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "That went well," he muttered. "She hates me," Hannah said. "She doesn't hate you, she just—" Damien paused. "Okay, she probably doesn't like you much. But my mother doesn't like anyone. It's not personal." It feels pretty personal. Trust me, if she really didn't want you here, she would have said so. The fact that she's just being passively hostile means you're fine. Hannah looked at him like he was insane. That's a very low bar for fine. Welcome to my family. Dinner was announced, and they found their assigned table. Damien had made sure they were seated far enough from Catherine's table to avoid constant surveillance, but close enough to not seem like they were hiding. The other people at their table were mostly business associates and their wives, the kind of people who knew how to make conversation without saying anything meaningful. Noah sat between Damien and Hannah, looking increasingly overwhelmed. The noise level had risen, voices competing with the string quartet playing in the corner. Noah's hands started doing their twitching thing, fingers drumming against the tablecloth in increasingly rapid patterns. Hannah noticed immediately. She leaned close to Noah, speaking quietly enough that only he could hear. Damien watched his son's shoulders relax slightly, watched him nod at whatever she was saying. She pulled a small notebook from her purse, the same one she brought to the beach sometimes, and a pencil. Set them in front of Noah. He immediately started drawing, the familiar motion calming him. A woman across the table, Damien thought her name was Patricia, watched this exchange with poorly disguised curiosity. "Your son is very artistic," she said to Damien. "He likes to draw," Damien agreed. "Does he go to school?" "He has a private tutor." "Oh." Patricia glanced at her husband. "That's probably best, given his situation." Damien felt his jaw tighten. "Given what situation?" "Well, his not speaking. I just meant it's probably easier for him to be in a more controlled environment." "He's 6, Damien said flatly. "He's not a science experiment that needs controlled environments. He's a child." Awkward silence descended on the table. Patricia's face flushed red. Hannah's hand found Damien's under the table, squeezed once, a gentle reminder to breathe, to not make a scene. He forced himself to unclench his jaw. "Excuse me," he said, standing abruptly. "I need some air." He walked out of the ballroom and onto one of the hotel's balconies, the cold December night hitting his face like a slap. Behind him, he heard footsteps. "That was quite an exit," Hannah said, joining him at the railing. She was being condescending about Noah. "I know, but making a scene doesn't help him." "I'm so tired of people treating him like he's broken," Damien said, "like he's less than other kids because he doesn't talk." "I know," Hannah said again, softer this time. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the Seattle skyline glitter against the dark sky. "He's holding your hand now," Damien said. "That's huge. A month ago, he wouldn't have touched a stranger." "I'm not a stranger anymore." "No," Damien agreed. "You're not." Hannah looked at him, and there was something in her expression Damien couldn't quite read. Vulnerability, maybe. Or fear. "Damien." A crash from inside cut her off. They both turned. Through the glass doors, Damien could see commotion at their table. Noah was standing, chair knocked over, hands over his ears. People were staring. They both rushed back inside. Noah was breathing fast, on the edge of a meltdown. The noise, the lights, the people, it had all become too much. Hannah reached him first, crouching down to his level. She didn't try to touch him, didn't demand he calm down, just positioned herself between Noah and the staring crowd, giving him a wall to hide behind. "It's okay," she said quietly. "It's too loud, isn't it? Too many people?" Noah nodded frantically. "Do you want to leave?" Another nod. Hannah looked up at Damien. "We should go." "Let me get our coats." But before Damien could move, Catherine appeared, her expression tight with controlled anger. "What's going on here?" "Noah needs to leave," Damien said. "It's too overwhelming. He just got here. Surely he can manage a few hours." "He's having a panic attack, Mother. We're leaving." "You're making a scene," Catherine hissed. "Everyone is staring." "I don't care." "Well, I do. This is my event, Damien. You can't just—" "Watch me." Damien turned to Hannah. "Get Noah out to the lobby. I'll meet you there in 2 minutes." Hannah nodded, gently guiding Noah through the crowd. People parted for them, whispers following in their wake. Catherine grabbed Damien's arm. "You're embarrassing me." "You're embarrassing yourself," Damien said. "Your grandson is in distress, and all you care about is what your friends think." "That's not fair, isn't it? When was the last time you asked how Noah was doing? When was the last time you spent any time with him that didn't involve showing him off to your social circle? Catherine's face went pale. I've tried with that boy. You know I have. But he doesn't respond. He doesn't engage. Because you treat him like a problem instead of a person, Damien said. Just like everyone else in this room. He pulled his arm free and walked away, leaving his mother standing in the middle of her perfect gala, looking anything but composed. In the lobby, Hannah had Noah sitting on a bench, his breathing still elevated but starting to calm. She was humming, that same melody Noah hummed sometimes, and slowly, incrementally, the boy's hands came down from his ears. Damien sat down on Noah's other side. I'm sorry, buddy. That was too much. We shouldn't have come. Noah leaned against him, exhausted. The car's already here, Hannah said. I texted them when we came out. Of course she had. Of course she'd thought ahead, managed the situation while Damien was arguing with his mother. They climbed into the car, Noah between them in the back seat. Within minutes, the boy was asleep, head resting against Hannah's shoulder. I'm sorry, Damien said quietly. Tonight was a disaster. It wasn't your fault. I knew this was a bad idea. I let my mother pressure me into something I knew Noah wasn't ready for. You were trying, Hannah said. That's all you can do. It's not enough. It's more than most parents do. Hannah looked down at Noah's sleeping face. He knows you love him. He knows you're trying. That matters more than one bad night. They rode in silence for a while. Finally, Damien said, Thank you for being there, for knowing what he needed when I was too angry to think straight. That's what I'm here for. Is it? Damien asked. Because lately, it feels like you're here for more than just helping Noah through difficult situations. Hannah's expression shuddered. I don't know what you mean. Hannah, we're here, she said as the car pulled up to her building. I should go. Wait. Damien put his hand on her arm, gentle. Can we talk? Really talk? About what? About this. About us. About what this has become. Hannah looked at him, and in the dim light from the street lamps, Damien saw fear in her eyes. There is no us, Damien. There's you and Noah, and there's me helping Noah, that's all. You don't believe that. I have to believe it, Hannah said, because anything else it's too complicated, too risky. Why? Because I can't. She stopped, took a breath. I can't let myself care this much. Not about Noah, not about you. Because when I care, when I let myself get close, people get hurt. Michael got hurt, I got hurt, and I can't do that again. You're not responsible for what happened to Michael. You don't know that? I do, Damien said firmly. I read every report, every investigation. It was an accident, a terrible, tragic accident, but it wasn't your fault. Tears were streaming down Hannah's face now. Then why does it still feel like my fault? Why do I still see his face every time I close my eyes? Damien wanted to pull her close, to comfort her somehow, but Noah was asleep between them, and Hannah looked like she might shatter if anyone touched her. I should go, she said again, wiping her eyes. Noah's exhausted. He needs to get home. She climbed out of the car before Damien could stop her. He watched her walk into her building, disappearing from view. The driver glanced back. Home, sir? Yeah, Damien said quietly. Home. Noah woke up when Damien carried him inside, groggy and confused. Mrs. Chen helped get him changed and into bed. Damien sat beside his son until he fell back asleep, watching the boy's chest rise and fall in the darkness. His phone buzzed. A text from Hannah. I'm sorry about tonight. I think maybe we should take a break from our Saturday meetings. Give Noah some space to process. Damien stared at the message, feeling something cold settle in his stomach. She was running, pushing them away before she could get hurt again, or before she could fail them the way she thought she'd failed Michael. He typed back, If that's what you think is best. 3 dots appeared and disappeared multiple times. Finally, I do. I'm sorry. Damien put his phone down, looked at his sleeping son. They'd made so much progress. Noah was engaging, connecting, starting to come out of his shell. And now Hannah was leaving because she was too scared to stay. He understood fear, understood the instinct to protect yourself from pain, but understanding didn't make it hurt less. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Hannah. Tell Noah I'll miss him and that none of this was his fault. Damien felt anger flash through him. She was doing it again, taking responsibility that wasn't hers, assuming she'd somehow damaged Noah by being in his life. He called her. She didn't answer. He called again. On the third try, she picked up. Damien. Don't do this, he said. Don't walk away because you're scared. I'm not scared, I'm being realistic. You're being a coward. Silence on the other end. Then, excuse me? You heard me. You're running away because this got too real, too close. Because Noah started to need you and I started to care about you and that terrified you. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? You've spent 3 years hiding in a restaurant, serving food to people who don't even see you because it was safe. Because waitressing doesn't require you to care, doesn't risk anyone getting hurt. But then Noah came along and you couldn't help yourself. You cared anyway. And now that we need you, you're bailing. I'm protecting you, Hannah said, voice shaking. Both of you, before I can fail you the way I failed Michael. You didn't fail Michael. You weren't there. Neither were you, Damien shot back. You were in another room. A child climbed out a window you had no reason to think was unlocked. That's not failure. That's tragic coincidence. But you've decided to carry that guilt around like it defines you. Like one terrible moment erases everything good you've ever done. Stop, Hannah said. Just stop. No, because someone needs to tell you the truth. You're brilliant with Noah. You see him in ways no one else can. You've helped him make more progress in 2 months than he made in 4 years. But instead of accepting that, you're convinced you're going to hurt him. You're so terrified of failing that you won't let yourself succeed. This isn't about success or failure, then what is it about? It's about the fact that I'm falling for you, Hannah shouted, and that terrifies me even more than failing Noah, because I can't be what you need. I can't be the person who saves your son and falls in love with you and builds some perfect life. I'm too broken for that, too scared. Damien felt like he'd been punched in the chest. You're falling for me? A long pause, then quietly. Yes. Then why are you pushing me away? Because when people love me, they get hurt. My parents died in a car accident when I was 6. Michael died while I was supposed to be watching him. Everyone I care about gets hurt, Damien finished. I know. I read about your parents. But Hannah, that's life. People get hurt, people die, but that doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you hold on to the people you love while you have them. I can't, Hannah whispered. I'm sorry, but I can't. The line went dead. Damien stood there in Noah's darkened room, phone still pressed to his ear, feeling like the ground had opened up beneath him. She'd said it. She was falling for him, and then in the same breath she'd pushed him away. He wanted to throw something, wanted to drive to her apartment and pound on the door until she let him in, wanted to shake her and make her understand that running wasn't protecting anyone. It was just guaranteeing they'd all end up hurt and alone. But he couldn't do any of that, because Noah was asleep in bed and Damien had responsibilities that went beyond his own feelings. So instead, he sat down in the chair beside his son's bed and tried to figure out what the hell he was supposed to do now. Noah stirred, opened his eyes, looked at his father in the darkness. Can't sleep? Damien asked quietly. Noah shook his head. Me neither, buddy. The boy sat up, crawled over to the edge of the bed. Damien pulled him into his lap, held him close. Hannah's not coming back, Damien said. He hadn't meant to say it, but it came out anyway. I'm sorry. I know you liked her. Noah went very still. It's not your fault, Damien continued. She's scared of getting hurt, of hurting us. So she's leaving before anything bad can happen. Noah pulled back, looked at his father. Then he did something that stopped Damien's heart. He opened his mouth and sound came out. Not words, not yet, but a deliberate vocalization, a clear attempt at communication. One syllable, rough and uncertain, but unmistakable. Han. Damien couldn't breathe, couldn't move. His son had just spoken, actually spoken, for the first time in 4 years, her name, or the closest he could get to it. Noah, Damien whispered. Did you just... Han, Noah said again, more insistent this time. His eyes were wide, urgent, like he was trying to tell his father something important. You want Hannah back, Damien said. understanding flooding through him. Noah nodded frantically. Me too, buddy. Me too. They sat there together in the darkness, Damien holding his son who'd just spoken for the first time in 4 years, both of them wanting the same impossible thing. A woman who was too scared to stay, but too important to let go. Damien didn't sleep that night. He sat in Noah's room until dawn broke over Seattle, watching his son finally drift off, replaying that single syllable over and over in his mind. Han. 4 years of silence, broken for a woman who'd just walked away. When Mrs. Chen arrived at 7, she found Damien still in yesterday's tuxedo, unshaven, making coffee with shaking hands. Rough night? She asked, taking in his appearance. Noah spoke. Mrs. Chen froze, coffee mug halfway to the counter. What? Last night, after we got home, he said her name, Hannah's name, or close to it. He talked? Mrs. Chen's eyes were wide. Actually, talked? Words? One word, one syllable, really, but it was intentional, deliberate. He was trying to tell me he wants her back. Mrs. Chen set down the mug carefully. And Hannah? What did she say? She doesn't know. She told me last night she's done. Said she needs space, that she can't do this anymore. Damien ran his hand through his hair. She's scared, Chen, terrified of failing him, of failing us, so she's running. And you're going to let her? Damien looked at her. Mrs. Chen wasn't the type to get involved in his personal life. She managed Noah, kept the household running, and otherwise stayed out of the way. For her to ask meant something. What am I supposed to do? Chase after her? Force her to stay? You're supposed to fight, Mrs. Chen said firmly. That woman loves your son. Maybe loves you too, from what I've seen. And your son just spoke for the first time in 4 years because he wants her back. So yes, you fight. She said she can't be what we need. People say a lot of things when they're scared. Doesn't make them true. Damien stared at his coffee, watching steam rise in lazy spirals. What if she's right? What if I'm asking too much? She's already been through hell with Michael Torres. Maybe I'm being selfish, expecting her to risk that kind of pain again. Or maybe you're being a coward, Mrs. Chen said, just like her. The words hit harder because they were true. He'd spent the night feeling sorry for himself instead of figuring out how to fix this, instead of fighting for the woman who'd given his son back his voice. I don't know how to convince her, Damien admitted. Then figure it out. You're supposed to be a genius businessman. Apply some of that brain to your personal life. Mrs. Chen started making breakfast. And take a shower. You look terrible. Damien did shower, shaved, changed into clothes that didn't smell like the gala, but he still didn't have a plan. Didn't know how to reach someone who'd spent 3 years building walls specifically to keep people out. He was sitting at his desk, staring at his phone, when Marcus called. So I heard your mother's gala was eventful, Marcus said without preamble. Word travels fast. Your mother called me at midnight, furious. Something about you making a scene and abandoning her event. Want to tell me what actually happened? Damien gave him the abbreviated version. Noah's meltdown, the argument with Catherine, Hannah's confession in the car, the phone call where she'd pushed him away. He left out the part about Noah speaking. That felt too raw, too precious to share yet. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, you're in love with her. That's not... Don't lie to me. You're in love with her, and she's in love with you, and you're both too scared to do anything about it. She's not scared of being in love, she's scared of failing Noah, of repeating what happened with Michael Torres. Which is another way of saying she's scared of being in love, Marcus said. Look, I'm not a therapist, but even I can see that woman is carrying around guilt that's eating her alive. And until she deals with it, really deals with it, she's going to keep running. So what am I supposed to do? Make her stop running. Show her that what she's scared of, failing, hurting people, losing control, those things aren't as scary as losing what you have together. We don't have anything together. We had Saturday mornings at the beach. You have a kid who responded to her when he wouldn't respond to anyone else. You have feelings you can't hide anymore. You have a chance at something real. That's not nothing, Damien. After they hung up, Damien sat at his desk and thought about Michael Torres, about a 7-year-old boy who'd climbed out a window while Hannah was on the phone, about an accident that had destroyed her career and her sense of self. He pulled up the old articles again, read them more carefully this time. The investigation had been thorough. Police reports, child services evaluations, witness statements. Everyone had concluded the same thing. Tragic accident, no negligence, no fault assigned. Everyone except Hannah. There was a quote from Michael's mother near the end of one article. Victoria Torres, speaking to a reporter 3 months after her son's death. Dr. Cole did everything she could. She loved my Michael, tried so hard to help him. What happened wasn't her fault. It was just one of those terrible things that happen sometimes. I don't blame her. I never blamed her. Damien read it 3 times. Victoria Torres didn't blame Hannah. The police didn't blame Hannah. The hospital's review board didn't blame Hannah. Only Hannah blamed Hannah. He searched for Victoria Torres, found an address in Tacoma, an hour south of Seattle. On impulse, he grabbed his keys. I need to go out, he told Mrs. Chen. Can you watch Noah? Where are you going? To talk to someone who might help me understand. The drive to Tacoma gave Damien time to question whether this was insane. Showing up unannounced at the home of a woman whose son had died 3 years ago, asking her to talk about the worst day of her life. It was invasive, inappropriate, possibly cruel. But he needed to understand, needed to know what had actually happened that day, from someone who'd been there. Victoria Torres lived in a small house in a quiet neighborhood. Damien sat in his car for 10 minutes, trying to figure out what he'd even say. Finally, he got out and knocked. The woman who answered looked older than her years, exhaustion written into every line of her face, but her eyes were kind when she looked at him. Can I help you? Mrs. Torres, I'm Damien Vale. I know this is unexpected, and I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to talk to you about Hannah Cole. Victoria's expression shifted immediately. Is she okay? Damien paused. She's struggling with what happened to Michael, and I thought maybe if I understood more about that day, I could help her. Victoria studied him for a long moment. You care about her? Yes. Come in. The house was small, neat, filled with photos of a smiling boy with dark hair and his mother's kind eyes. Michael. He'd been beautiful. Victoria made coffee they didn't drink and sat across from Damien in a living room that felt like a shrine to her lost son. Hannah hasn't contacted me in 3 years, Victoria said quietly. I tried reaching out after. Wanted to tell her it wasn't her fault. But she wouldn't answer my calls, wouldn't see me. Eventually, I stopped trying. She thinks she killed your son, Damien said. I know. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. But she didn't. He had severe ADHD, impulse control issues. He'd climb things, jump from heights, do dangerous things without thinking. Hannah knew that. That's why I hired her, to help him learn to manage his impulses better. What happened that day? Victoria took a shaky breath. I was at work. Hannah was doing a home visit, which was part of her treatment plan with Michael. They were in the living room working on some behavioral exercises. The hospital called her. There was an emergency with another patient, needed her input on something. She stepped into the kitchen to take the call, told Michael to stay put and color. She was gone maybe 5 minutes. And Michael climbed out the window, the second-story window in his bedroom. I told Hannah it was locked. I thought it was locked, but Michael had figured out how to unlock it the week before, and I didn't know. He climbed out onto the roof, probably thought he could jump to the tree branch like he'd been talking about for days. He fell. Victoria wiped her eyes. Hannah heard the impact, called 911 immediately, ran outside, started CPR. She rode in the ambulance with him, stayed at the hospital. She was there when he died, held my hand while I said goodbye to my baby. Damien felt his throat tighten. I'm sorry, I can't imagine. People always say that, but you're right, you can't. No one can unless they've lost a child. Victoria looked at Michael's photo on the wall. Hannah blamed herself from the first minute, kept saying she should have known, should have checked the windows, should have been watching him every second. But that's not realistic. You can't watch a 7-year-old every single second. Kids find ways to hurt themselves no matter how careful you are. Did you tell her that? I tried, many times, but she wouldn't hear it. She quit her job, stopped practicing, disappeared. I heard she was working at a restaurant somewhere. Victoria looked back at Damien. Is that where you met her? Yes, she waited on me and my son. My son has selective mutism, hasn't spoken in 4 years. But Hannah connected with him somehow. got him to engage in ways no therapist ever could. She's been spending time with him, helping him. Until last night, when she got scared and pushed us away. Because she's afraid of failing him too. Yes, Victoria nodded slowly. That sounds like Hannah. She has this need to save everyone, fix everything. When she can't, when something goes wrong despite her best efforts, she takes it as personal failure. How do I help her see that's not true? I don't know if you can, Victoria said honestly. Guilt like that, it's not rational. It's not something you can logic away. She has to choose to forgive herself, and I don't know if she's capable of that. Damien felt hope deflating. So there's nothing I can do? I didn't say that. Victoria stood up, went to a bookshelf, pulled out a photo album. She flipped through pages until she found what she was looking for. This is from Michael's 6th birthday party, 2 months before he died. The photo showed Michael laughing, his whole face lit up with joy. Beside him, also laughing, was Hannah. Younger, lighter, free of the weight she carried now. She was good with him, Victoria said, made him feel safe, helped him manage his feelings. He loved her, and she loved him. What happened was a tragedy, but it doesn't erase all the good she did for my son. The progress he made, the tools she gave him, those mattered. They still matter even though he's gone. She closed the album, handed it to Damien. Give this to her. Tell her I said it's time to remember the child she helped, not just the one she lost. Tell her Michael would want her to keep helping kids like him. Like your son. Damien took the album carefully. Thank you for talking to me, for this. Help her, Victoria said. She deserves to be happy again. She deserves to forgive herself. The drive back to Seattle, Damien kept glancing at the album on the passenger seat. Evidence of Hannah's capacity for love, for connection, for making a difference. Evidence she'd been denying herself for 3 years. When he got home, Noah was in the living room with Mrs. Chen, drawing. The boy looked up when Damien entered, and his face did something complicated. Hope, maybe. Or question. I'm working on it, Damien said quietly. Noah held up his drawing. It was a stick figure, clearly Hannah, based on the long hair, standing between 2 other figures. One tall, one small. Family. Damien's chest ached. Yeah, buddy, that's what I want too. He spent the rest of the day trying to figure out his next move. He could show up at Hannah's apartment, but she might not answer the door. He could go to Marchand, but confronting her at work felt wrong. He could call, but she'd already proven she wouldn't answer. He needed something that would make her stop running long enough to listen, something that would break through her walls. That night he drafted an email, deleted it, drafted another, deleted that too. Everything he wrote felt either too aggressive or too desperate or too manipulative. Finally, at 2 a.m, exhausted and running on fumes, he wrote something simple. Hannah, I'm not going to chase you or pressure you or try to convince you that you're wrong about yourself, but I need you to know 3 things. First, Noah spoke last night. 1 word, your name, or close to it. Second, I drove to Tacoma today and talked to Victoria Torres. She doesn't blame you. She never did. She wanted me to give you something, and I'd like to do that if you'll let me. Third, I'm in love with you. Not because you helped my son, though I'm grateful for that, but because you're kind and thoughtful and brave even when you don't feel brave. Because you see people other people miss. Because when you laugh, it sounds like something rare and precious. I understand if you can't be with me. I understand if the risk feels too great, but please don't disappear without knowing how much you matter. To Noah. To me. Damien. He hit send before he could second-guess himself, then put his phone down and tried to sleep. His phone buzzed at 6 a.m. A text from Hannah. What did Victoria give you? Just that. No acknowledgement of anything else he'd written, but she'd responded, which was more than he'd expected. A photo album, from when she was working with Michael. She thought you should have it. 3 dots appeared and disappeared multiple times. Finally, can you bring it to Discovery Park? Our usual spot. 10 a.m. I'll be there. Damien spent the next 4 hours in a state of anxious energy. He showered, made breakfast Noah didn't eat, tried to answer work emails and gave up after reading the same paragraph 5 times without comprehending it. Mrs. Chen watched him pace. You're going to wear a hole in the floor. She wants to meet. That's good. Or it's her way of saying goodbye in person. Stop catastrophizing. Go to the park, talk to her, give her the album, let her make her own choice. At 9:30, Damien couldn't wait anymore. He grabbed the album, told Mrs. Chen he'd be back in a few hours, and drove to Discovery Park. Hannah was already there when he arrived, sitting on their usual bench. She looked like she hadn't slept either, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back messily, wearing jeans and an old sweatshirt instead of her usual put-together appearance. She stood when she saw him. "Hi." "Hi." Damien held out the album. "Victoria wanted you to have this." Hannah took it like it might explode, sat back down, opened it slowly. Damien watched her face as she turned pages, saw emotions flicker across it too fast to name. Pain, grief, but also something else. Memory, maybe. Recognition of who she used to be. She stopped at the birthday party photo, the one Victoria had shown him, stared at it for a long time. "He was so happy that day," Hannah said quietly. "We'd been working on emotional regulation, and he'd just had his best week ever. No meltdowns, no impulsive behaviors. I thought we'd turned a corner." "You had," Damien said, sitting beside her carefully. "Victoria told me about all the progress he'd made, how much he loved working with you. And then he died." Hannah's voice was flat. "All that progress, all that work, gone in 5 minutes because I wasn't paying attention. You were doing your job. Another patient needed you. Michael needed me more. You couldn't have known what would happen." Hannah closed the album. "That's what everyone said. The police, the hospital, Victoria. Everyone was so quick to tell me it wasn't my fault, but they weren't there. They didn't hear him hit the ground. They didn't do chest compressions on a child who was already gone. They didn't have to look Victoria in the eye and tell her that her son died while I was in the other room." "Victoria doesn't blame you," Damien said. "She told me that herself. She said you were good for Michael, that you helped him in ways no one else could. Until I didn't. Until an accident happened that no one could have prevented." Hannah stood up abruptly, started walking toward the trail. Damien followed. They walked in silence for a few minutes before she spoke again. "I got your email." "I know, that's why I'm here. You said Noah spoke." "He did. Last night, after we got home from the gala. He was upset that you weren't there, and I told him you weren't coming back. He looked at me and said your name. Well, Han, close enough." Hannah stopped walking. "He spoke. First word in 4 years. Because of me leaving? Because he wanted you back." Damien moved to stand in front of her. "He drew you a picture this morning, the 3 of us together. That's what he wants, Hannah. You, me, him. A family." Tears were sliding down Hannah's face. "I can't be what you need." "Why not?" "Because I'm broken. Because I'm terrified every second that I'll fail him, fail you. Because every time I close my eyes, I see Michael falling, and I think, what if that happens to Noah? What if I get distracted, or I miss something, or I make the wrong call and he gets hurt? Then we deal with it," Damien said. "Together. Hannah, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be present. To stop running from something that could be good just because you're scared it might go bad. You don't understand. I do, actually. You think you're the only one who's terrified? I'm scared every single day. Scared that Noah will never talk, never connect, never have a normal life. Scared that I'm failing him as a father. Scared that my love isn't enough to break through whatever wall he's built around himself. But being scared doesn't mean I stop trying. Doesn't mean I give up. That's different." "How?" "Because he's your son. You don't have a choice. And I don't have a choice about loving you either," Damien said. "It just happened. Somewhere between watching you teach Noah to skip rocks and seeing you handle his meltdown at the gala, I fell in love with you. And yeah, that's terrifying. But walking away because I'm scared of getting hurt, that's not protecting myself. That's just guaranteeing I'll end up alone and miserable." Hannah was crying harder now. "What if I can't do this? What if I try and I fail and Noah gets hurt? What if you try and you succeed? What if you're exactly what we need?" Damien took her hands. "Hannah, you've already succeeded. Noah spoke because of you, not because of expensive therapists or behavioral interventions or any of the things I threw money at. Because of you, being patient and kind, and seeing him for who he is. One word, Hannah said. That's all. One word doesn't mean he's cured. I'm not asking you to cure him. I'm asking you to be part of his life, part of our lives. I'm so tired, Hannah whispered. Tired of carrying this guilt, tired of being scared, tired of pushing people away. But I don't know how to stop. You start by forgiving yourself, Damien said. You start by accepting that Michael's death was a tragedy, not a failure. You start by letting yourself care about Noah without constantly waiting for disaster. You start by taking a chance on something that might actually work. Hannah looked at him, really looked at him, and Damien saw the war happening behind her eyes. Fear and hope battling for dominance, grief and love tangled together so tightly they couldn't be separated. What if I'm not enough? She asked. What if you are? They stood there on the trail, hands clasped, while joggers passed and dogs barked, and the world continued around them. Finally, Hannah took a shaky breath. I want to try, she said. I'm terrified, and I don't know if I can do this, but I want to try. Relief flooded through Damien so intensely his knees almost buckled. Yeah? Yeah. She laughed, watery and uncertain. I must be insane. We both are. Damien pulled her close, and this time she let him. Let herself be held. Let herself lean into him. We'll figure it out together. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped around each other while Seattle's gray sky threatened rain. When they finally pulled apart, Hannah wiped her eyes. I should see Noah. Tell him I'm not disappearing. He's at home with Mrs. Chen. We could go now if you want. They walked back to the parking lot. Damien offered to drive them both, but Hannah shook her head. I'll follow you. I need to know I can leave if it gets too overwhelming. Okay, Damien said, understanding. She was trying, but she still needed escape routes. That was fine. They had time to build trust. The drive back felt endless. Damien kept checking his rearview mirror, making sure Hannah was still behind him, terrified she'd change her mind and disappear. But she stayed, followed him all the way to his house. Mrs. Chen answered the door, took one look at them both, and smiled. I'll make coffee. Noah was in the living room, still drawing. He looked up when they entered, and his whole face transformed when he saw Hannah. He ran to her, actually ran, throwing himself against her legs with an impact that made her stumble backward. Hey, she said, crouching down to his level. I'm sorry I left. That was scary, wasn't it? Noah nodded, clinging to her. I'm back now, if you still want me around. Noah pulled back enough to look at her face. Then he opened his mouth, and sound came out. Stay. One word. Clear, unmistakable. Stay. Hannah burst into tears, pulling Noah close. Okay, I'll stay. Damien stood back and watched them, this woman he loved and the son he'd thought was lost, holding on to each other like lifelines. Mrs. Chen appeared beside him with coffee, watching the scene with misty eyes. Told you to fight, she murmured. You were right. Usually am. They spent the afternoon together, the four of them. Noah showed Hannah all his drawings, the stick figure family appearing in various configurations. Hannah admired each one, asking questions, letting Noah guide her through his visual language. When Mrs. Chen left for the day, Damien ordered pizza. They ate in the living room, Noah between them on the couch, some animated movie playing that none of them were really watching. This feels normal, Hannah said quietly. Weirdly normal. Is that bad? No, just, I haven't felt normal in 3 years. It's strange. Noah had fallen asleep against her shoulder. Hannah stroked his hair absently, careful not to wake him. He spoke twice today, Damien said. That's more than he said in 4 years combined. It might not last. Progress isn't linear. I know. But even if he doesn't say another word for 6 months, we know he can. That's something. Hannah nodded. I want to be here for it. For all of it. The progress and the setbacks and everything in between. Even the hard parts? Especially the hard parts. She looked at him. I'm not going to be perfect at this. I'm going to panic sometimes, doubt myself, probably mess things up. So will I. But I'm going to try, really try, not just with Noah, but with you, with us. That's all I'm asking. Noah stirred, mumbled something in his sleep that might have been a word or might have been nothing. Hannah adjusted her position carefully, making sure he stayed comfortable. "I should probably go," she said. "It's getting late." "Or you could stay," Damien said. "Guest room's made up. You could be here in the morning when he wakes up. Might be good for him, seeing you here." Hannah hesitated. "I don't want to move too fast. It's just sleeping in the same house. Separate rooms. Nothing scandalous." She smiled, and it reached her eyes this time. "Okay, I'll stay." Damien helped her move Noah to his bed. The boy barely stirred, just curled into his pillows and went back to sleep. They stood in the doorway for a moment watching him. "He looks peaceful," Hannah said. "He is. First time in a long time." Damien showed Hannah to the guest room, made sure she had everything she needed. They stood in the hallway, neither quite ready to say goodnight. "Thank you," Hannah said finally, "for not giving up on me, for fighting when I was ready to run. Thank you for coming back." She kissed him then, soft and tentative. When she pulled away, her eyes were wide, like she'd surprised herself. "Was that okay?" she asked. "More than okay." "Good. Because I've been wanting to do that for weeks." "Why didn't you?" "Because I was terrified. Still am, honestly." "Me too," Damien admitted, "but less than I was yesterday." They said goodnight eventually, retreated to separate rooms. Damien lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, barely able to believe the day had actually happened. This morning he'd been planning how to convince Hannah to stay. Now she was asleep down the hall, and Noah had spoken, and everything felt simultaneously fragile and impossibly right. His phone buzzed, a text from Hannah. "Can't sleep. Keep thinking I'm going to wake up and this will all be a dream." He typed back, "Not a dream. You're really here." Noah really talked. He really did. "I'm scared I'm going to screw this up." "You won't. And if you do, we'll fix it." A long pause. Then, "Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Always. Damien fell asleep with his phone still in his hand, feeling something he'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. Not the desperate, grasping kind he'd been carrying around for years, but real hope, grounded in actual progress and real connection. He woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of voices. For a disoriented moment, he couldn't place what was wrong, then realized Noah was talking. He ran downstairs. In the kitchen, Hannah stood at the stove making pancakes while Noah sat at the table chattering away. Not full sentences, not elaborate conversations, but words, simple, clear words. "More," Noah was saying. "Please, more." "More pancakes coming up," Hannah said. She looked up when Damien entered, and her smile was radiant. "Morning." He woke up talking, just started and hasn't stopped. Damien sat down next to his son, still processing. "What do you want to talk about, buddy?" "Beach," Noah said. "Go beach? You want to go to the beach?" Noah nodded enthusiastically. "Hannah too." "Hannah too," Damien agreed, looking at her. "If she wants to come." "I want to come," Hannah said, flipping a pancake. "Wouldn't miss it." They spent the morning at Discovery Park, same trail they'd walked a dozen times. But everything was different now. Noah talked constantly. Observations about birds, questions about rocks, simple statements about things he liked or didn't like. The vocabulary was limited, the grammar rough, but it was communication. Real, genuine communication. Hannah walked beside him, answering his questions, encouraging without pushing. Damien followed slightly behind, watching them together, feeling like he'd stepped into an alternate reality where good things actually happened. At the beach, Noah found a piece of driftwood and declared it a boat. He and Hannah launched it from the shore, watching it bob in the waves. "It's sailing," Noah said. "To island." "What island?" Hannah asked. "Happy Island, where everyone happy." Hannah looked at Damien, eyes glistening. He understood. Happy Island, where everyone happy. That's where Noah saw himself now. Not trapped in silence, not isolated in his own mind. Happy. They stayed until early afternoon, until Noah started to tire. The walk back was slower, quieter. Noah held both their hands, swinging between them occasionally. "This okay?" he asked. "All three?" "More than okay," Hannah said. "It's perfect." "Stay forever?" Hannah's steps faltered slightly, but she recovered. I'm going to try. Promise? I promised to try my hardest. It was the most honest answer she could give, and Noah seemed satisfied with it. He went back to humming, that same melody he'd been humming since the beginning. That night, after Noah was asleep, Damien and Hannah sat on the back deck with wine, watching lights come on across the city. He asked me to stay forever, Hannah said. I didn't know what to say. You said exactly the right thing, promising to try. What if trying isn't enough? Then we try harder. Damien reached for her hand. Hannah, I know you're still scared. I know you're waiting for something to go wrong. But can I tell you what I see? What? I see a woman who helped a 6-year-old find his voice, who fought through her own trauma to give a child what he needed, who's brave enough to try even when she's terrified. That's not someone who's going to fail. That's someone who's going to succeed even when it's hard. Hannah was quiet for a long time. I went to see Victoria Torres once, she finally said, about 6 months after Michael died. I was going to apologize, try to explain, but when I got to her house, I couldn't get out of the car. Just sat there for 2 hours, too scared to knock on the door. Eventually, I left. She would have forgiven you. I know, that's what made it worse. I wanted her to be angry, to blame me. Would have been easier than forgiving myself. And now? Now I'm trying to learn how. Hannah leaned her head on his shoulder. It's harder than I thought. Forgiveness. Worth it, though. Yeah, she said quietly. I think maybe it is. They sat there as the sky darkened, as stars struggled to break through Seattle's light pollution, as the city settled into its evening rhythms. And for the first time in longer than either of them could remember, the future didn't feel terrifying. It felt possible. The next 3 weeks unfolded like something from a life Damien hadn't known he was allowed to want. Hannah started staying over more nights than not, her things gradually migrating from the guest room into his space, a toothbrush in the bathroom, a sweater draped over the chair, her coffee mug next to his in the cabinet. Nothing was official. Nothing was discussed. It just happened, natural as breathing. Noah's progress continued, though not in the straight line Damien had secretly hoped for. Some days he talked constantly, asking questions about everything, narrating his thoughts like he was making up for 4 years of silence. Other days he barely spoke at all, retreating into humming and drawing. Hannah said that was normal, that language development after selective mutism was rarely consistent. He's figuring out how to use his voice again, she explained one evening while they did dishes. That takes time. Some days it feels safe, some days it doesn't. How do I help on the days it doesn't feel safe? You do what you're already doing. You stay patient. You don't pressure him. You let him know he's loved whether he talks or not. It sounded simple when she said it. Damien was learning that most important things were simple in theory, brutal in practice. Mrs. Chen had taken to Hannah immediately, which surprised no one. What did surprise Damien was his mother's reaction when she finally met her, 3 weeks after the disastrous gala, at a lunch Damien had been dreading for days. Catherine arrived at the restaurant exactly on time, wearing what looked like disapproval underneath her designer suit. She assessed Hannah with the same critical eye she'd use on a business proposal, looking for weaknesses. So you're the waitress? Catherine said, not bothering with pleasantries. Former waitress, Hannah corrected gently. I gave notice last week. This was news to Damien. You did? It was time. Hannah met Catherine's gaze without flinching. I'm going back to school, actually. Refresher courses in child psychology. I've been out of the field too long. Catherine's eyebrows rose. You're a psychologist? I was. I took a break after a patient died, but I'm ready to start again. The bluntness seemed to catch Catherine off guard. She'd probably expected evasion, defensiveness. Instead, Hannah had laid out her worst failure like it was simply a fact, not a secret to be ashamed of. That must have been difficult, Catherine said, and for once she sounded almost sincere. It was. Still is, some days, but I'm learning to live with it. They ordered food. The conversation stayed surface level. Weather, the restaurant, Catherine's latest charity project. But something had shifted in Catherine's demeanor. She was still assessing Hannah, but now it felt more like curiosity than judgment. How is Noah doing? Catherine asked eventually. I heard he's speaking now. He is, Damien said. Not constantly, but more every day. I'd like to see him. if that's acceptable. Damien almost dropped his fork. His mother hadn't voluntarily asked to spend time with Noah in over a year. Of course. When? This weekend, perhaps. I could take him to the museum or the aquarium. He loves the aquarium, Hannah offered. The jellyfish exhibit especially. Catherine looked at her. You'll come too? If Noah wants me there? He'll want you there, Damien said. After lunch, as they walked to their cars, Catherine pulled Damien aside. She's not what I expected, his mother said. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. Catherine adjusted her purse. I thought you were making a mistake, getting involved with someone who works in food service, who has no connections, no background that would benefit your position. I don't care about any of that. I know. That's what I'm starting to understand. Catherine looked at him directly. You love her. It wasn't a question, but Damien answered anyway. Yes. And she makes Noah happy. They make each other happy. Catherine nodded slowly. Then I suppose I should make an effort, for your sake, and for my grandson's. It was the closest thing to approval Damien was likely to get from his mother. He'd take it. The weekend visit to the aquarium went better than anyone expected. Catherine was stiff at first, trying too hard, but Noah's excitement about the jellyfish was infectious. Soon she was crouching beside him, listening to his observations about how they moved, asking questions that showed genuine interest. Hannah hung back, giving them space. Damien found her watching from a bench, a small smile on her face. You okay? He asked, sitting beside her. Yeah, just thinking how far we've all come. She leaned against him. 3 months ago, I was serving overpriced food to people I'd never see again. Now I'm at an aquarium watching your mother bond with your son. Strange how life works. Terrifying, you mean? That too. Catherine insisted on buying Noah a stuffed jellyfish from the gift shop. The boy clutched it like treasure all the way home, talking to it in soft tones about everything they'd seen. But not everything was smooth. 2 weeks later, reality came crashing back in the form of a phone call that made Hannah's face go white. When? She asked whoever was on the other end. Where? Damien watched her pace the kitchen, anxiety radiating off her in waves. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. She hung up, hands shaking. What happened? That was a lawyer. Victoria Torres's lawyer. Hannah sat down heavily. She's filing a wrongful death lawsuit against the hospital, against the social services agency, and she's named me as a witness. But you said she didn't blame you. She doesn't. She's suing the institutions, not me personally, but I'll have to testify, tell them what happened that day, relive the whole thing in front of lawyers and judges and reporters. Damien could see her shutting down, walls going back up. You don't have to do this alone. I do, though. This is my past, my mistake. It wasn't a mistake, Damien interrupted. It was an accident. And Victoria isn't suing because she blames you. She's suing because the systems failed her son. That's different. It doesn't feel different. Hannah pulled away when he tried to hold her, stood at the window staring out at nothing. I thought I was past this. Thought I'd dealt with it enough to move on. But hearing Victoria's name, thinking about having to talk about Michael in court, it's like I'm right back there. Back in that hospital room. Watching him die. What do you need? I don't know. She wrapped her arms around herself. Space, maybe. Time to think. The word space made Damien's stomach drop. You're not leaving. I'm not. Hannah stopped. I don't know what I'm doing. I just need to process this. Process it here with us. Don't run. I'm not running, Hannah said, but her voice lacked conviction. I need some air. She grabbed her keys and left before Damien could stop her. He stood in the kitchen, listening to her car start, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath his feet. Noah appeared in the doorway, jellyfish clutched to his chest. Hannah gone? She'll be back, Damien said, hoping it was true. She promised. I know, buddy, but she didn't come back that night, or the next morning. Her texts were brief, reassuring, but distant. I'm okay. Just need time. Tell Noah I love him. Damien wanted to drive to her apartment, pound on the door, make her talk to him. But he remembered what she'd said about needing to know she could leave if things got overwhelming. So he waited, hating every minute of it. Marcus called on the third day. I heard about the lawsuit. How's Hannah handling it? She's not. She's hiding. From you? From everything. Damien rubbed his eyes. I don't know how to help her, Marcus. Every time she starts to heal, something pulls her back. Maybe she needs to go through this instead of around it. Face the thing she's been running from for 3 years. What if facing it breaks her? What if not facing it does? The call came from an unknown number on day 4. Damien almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Vale? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. This is Victoria Torres. I hope I'm not overstepping, but I got your number from my lawyer. Is Hannah with you? No, she's been processing everything, the lawsuit. That's why I'm calling. She won't answer my calls, but I need her to understand something. I'm not doing this to hurt her. I'm doing this because the hospital ignored multiple safety reports about home visit protocols. Because social services was understaffed and overworked and cut corners. My son died because systems failed, not because Hannah failed. I need her to know that. Can you tell her yourself? She needs to hear it from you. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Give me your address. Damien hesitated only briefly before giving it to her. Maybe this was what Hannah needed, direct confrontation with the past she'd been avoiding. He texted Hannah. Victoria Torres is coming to see you. Please let her in. Please hear what she has to say. No response. An hour later, his phone rang. Hannah crying so hard she could barely speak. She doesn't blame me, Hannah gasped out. She brought pictures, showed me all these reports about safety violations, explained exactly what happened with the hospital's protocols. She doesn't blame me, Damien. She never did. I know. She said Michael loved me, that the time he had with me was good, that I helped him feel safe when nothing else did. She said I gave her son something precious, even though it ended terribly. She's right. She asked if I'd testify, not against myself, but with her, to help make sure what happened to Michael doesn't happen to other kids. She wants me to use my expertise to show where the systems broke down. Will you? Hannah took a shaky breath. I think I have to, not just for Victoria or for Michael, but for me. To finally put this in the right place in my head, not as my failure, but as a tragedy I was part of, but didn't cause. When are you coming home? Is that... Hannah paused. Is that what this is? Home? If you want it to be. I do, I really do. I'm just scared I'll mess it up. Then mess it up here, Damien said. With us. Where people love you anyway. She showed up 2 hours later, eyes red from crying, carrying a bag of her things from the apartment. Noah ran to her the second she walked through the door. You came back, he said, voice accusing. You left. I did, Hannah admitted, kneeling down. I got scared and I ran away. That was wrong. I'm sorry. Don't leave again. I'm going to try very hard not to. Promise? Hannah looked at Damien over Noah's head, something vulnerable in her expression. I promise. Noah seemed satisfied with this. He grabbed her hand and dragged her to the living room to show her a drawing he'd made, the 3 of them at the aquarium with jellyfish floating overhead. That night, after Noah was asleep, Hannah and Damien sat on the back deck again. It was raining lightly, mist hanging in the air. I talked to a therapist today, Hannah said. A real one, not just processing on my own. Victoria recommended someone who specializes in grief and trauma. How was it? Hard. Good, but hard. She said I've been carrying guilt that was never mine to carry, that Michael's death was a systems failure, not a personal one, and that until I separate those 2 things, I'll never really move forward. Do you believe her? I'm starting to. Hannah pulled her knees up to her chest. I told her about you and Noah, about how terrified I am of failing you both. What did she say? That fear is normal, that loving people means risking loss, and that's not something I can eliminate, but that the risk is worth it if I let myself actually be present instead of constantly preparing for disaster. Damien reached for her hand. Are you present? I'm trying to be, really trying this time. She squeezed his fingers. I want this, Damien, this life, this family. I want to be here for Noah's first day of school, for his first friend, for all the things I know are coming. I want to be here for you, through board meetings and difficult days and your mother's judgment. I want all of it, even the scary parts. Even the scary parts, Damien repeated. I like that. I need to testify at the lawsuit. Victoria needs me, and I think I need to do it for myself. It won't be easy. I'll be there. Every day if you want me. You have a company to run. Reynolds can handle it. You're more important. Hannah looked at him, rain misting her face. I love you. I should have said it before, but I was too scared. But I'm saying it now. I love you. I love you too. Damien pulled her close. Have for weeks, probably. Since you taught Noah to skip rocks, or maybe since the first night at Marchand. I don't know exactly when it started, just that it's true. They sat in the rain, holding each other, letting 3 years of grief and 4 years of worry wash away into the Seattle night. The lawsuit took 3 months to wind through depositions and hearings. Hannah testified twice, both times with Damien sitting in the gallery behind her. She was nervous but clear, explaining the gaps in protocol that had left Michael vulnerable, the understaffing that meant she was handling emergency calls during home visits, the lack of safety checks that should have been standard. Victoria won her case. The hospital settled, agreed to implement new protocols, hired additional staff for their home visit program. It wouldn't bring Michael back, but it might save the next child. After the settlement was announced, Victoria hugged Hannah in the courthouse hallway. Thank you, Victoria said, for being brave enough to tell the truth, for helping me make something good come from something terrible. I should be thanking you, Hannah said, for not hating me, for helping me see that I wasn't the monster I thought I was. You were never a monster. You were a woman who loved my son and tried to help him. That's all you ever were. They stayed in touch after that, not often, but enough. Cards on Michael's birthday, occasional coffee meetups. Hannah said it helped, being able to remember Michael as the joyful, complicated child he'd been instead of just the tragedy of his death. Noah started speech therapy, actual formal speech therapy, with a specialist Hannah had recommended. His vocabulary expanded daily. He still had quiet days, still retreated into humming and drawing when the world felt too loud. But he was engaging now, making friends at his new school, telling terrible 6-year-old jokes that made Hannah laugh until she cried. 6 months after Hannah moved in permanently, Damien's mother invited them all to Sunday dinner. It had become a monthly tradition, one that Catherine seemed to actually enjoy, despite her protests that cooking for children was chaos. Grammy, Noah announced at dinner, using the name he'd recently decided Catherine should have. Hannah and Dad kiss. A lot. Catherine raised her eyebrows. Do they? All the time. It's gross. I imagine it is, Catherine said, fighting a smile. Perhaps they should be more discreet. Perhaps certain 6-year-olds should mind their own business, Damien said, but he was grinning. Hannah had gone bright red. Noah, we talked about this. Some things are private. But it's true. Truth and privacy aren't mutually exclusive, young man. Noah considered this seriously, then went back to his mashed potatoes. Crisis averted. After dinner, Catherine pulled Damien aside while Hannah helped Noah with a puzzle. I was wrong about her, Catherine said without preamble. I know. I'm saying it anyway. I thought she was... I don't know what I thought. Someone taking advantage, maybe. Someone who didn't understand what being part of this family meant. But she's good for you, good for Noah, and that's what matters. Are you feeling okay? You're being almost nice. Catherine swatted his arm. I'm always nice. You're really not. Well, perhaps I'm trying to be better. My grandson seems to think I should be. She glanced at Noah, something soft in her expression. He asked me last week if I loved him even though he was different. Can you imagine? A 6-year-old asking that question. What did you tell him? I told him he wasn't different. He was exactly who he was supposed to be. And that I loved him precisely because of who he is, not despite it. Catherine's voice wavered slightly. I should have said that years ago. Should have made sure he knew. You're saying it now. That's what counts. Spring came to Seattle, which meant the rain shifted from constant to intermittent, and people pretended that 55 degrees was warm enough for shorts. Hannah had finished her refresher courses, gotten her license reinstated, started taking clients again, just a few, children with selective mutism or trauma histories similar to Noah's. I'm good at this, she told Damien one evening, wonder in her voice. I forgot how good I was at this. I never forgot. That's because you're biased. Completely. Doesn't make it less true. She'd been working with a 5-year-old girl who hadn't spoken since her parents' divorce. After 2 months of sessions, the girl had started using single words, then phrases, then full sentences. Her mother had cried in Hannah's office, thanking her over and over. "That's what you gave me," Hannah said. "What Noah gave me, really. The reminder that I could still do this, that my past didn't have to define my future." Damien was planning the proposal for weeks before he realized he'd been planning it, looking at rings during lunch breaks, imagining how he'd ask, where, when. He wasn't trying to be romantic or grand. That wasn't who they were. He just wanted it to be right. He settled on Discovery Park, their beach, the spot where they'd spent so many Saturdays building something neither of them had known they needed. "Walk with me?" he asked one Saturday morning in late May. Hannah looked up from her coffee. "Just us?" "Mrs. Chen's taking Noah to the science center, so yes, just us." They walked the familiar trail, Hannah chattering about a new client, Damien only half listening because his heart was pounding and the ring box in his pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. At the beach, their beach, he stopped. "Remember the first time we came here?" Damien asked. "You brought bubbles and chalk and I watched you teach my son to play again." "I remember. He was so careful with everything, like he was afraid the world would break if he touched it wrong. You taught him it was okay to touch things, to engage, to be present." Damien took her hands. "You taught me that too." "Damien, let me finish. I've been practicing this." He took a breath. 3 years ago, I thought my life was over in any way that mattered. I had money and success and a son I couldn't reach. I'd given up on happiness, on connection, on anything beyond just surviving each day. Then you walked into that restaurant and everything changed. Hannah's eyes were already wet. "You're going to make me cry." "Good, because I'm about to ask you something important." He pulled out the ring box, opened it. "Hannah Cole, will you marry me? Will you be Noah's mother and my wife and the person I wake up next to for the rest of my life? Will you let me love you even on the days you're scared, even when you doubt yourself, even when you're convinced you're going to mess everything up?" "Yes," Hannah said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, of course, yes." The ring was simple. She'd said once she didn't like flashy jewelry, that she'd lose anything expensive. He slipped it on her finger and it fit perfectly. "I love you," he said. "I love your strength and your fear and your weird ability to communicate with 6-year-olds using rocks and humming. I love all of it." "I love you too." Hannah kissed him, salt from tears on her lips. "I love that you never gave up on me, even when I gave up on myself. I love that you see me as whole instead of broken." They stood there on their beach, holding each other while seagulls cried overhead and waves lapped at rocks, and Damien felt something he'd been chasing for years finally settle into place. Not perfection, they'd never be perfect, but rightness. The sense that despite everything that had gone wrong, despite all the pain and loss and fear, they'd found their way to something true. Noah was thrilled when they told him, though his main concern was whether he could still call Hannah Hannah or if he had to call her mom now. "Whatever you're comfortable with," Hannah said. "I'm not trying to replace anyone. I'm here. However you need me to be." Noah thought about this seriously. "Can I call you both?" "Both?" "Hannah. Mom." Hannah's eyes filled. "I would love that." Catherine insisted on hosting the engagement party, which turned into a massive affair with 200 people Damien barely knew. But she seemed happy planning it, seemed to relish having a project that was actually joyful instead of obligatory. "Your mother's terrifying," Hannah whispered during the party, watching Catherine direct caterers with military precision. "You're just figuring this out now?" "I knew she was intense. I didn't realize she was terrifying." "There's a difference?" "Apparently not." Marcus gave a toast that was embarrassing and heartfelt, talking about how he'd watched Damien shut down after his divorce, watched him pour everything into work and Noah and nothing into himself. "I didn't think he'd ever take a chance on someone again," Marcus said. And then Hannah walked into Marchand carrying a tray of food, and somehow saw straight through to the part of him he'd forgotten existed. So here's to Hannah for being brave enough to love a stubborn workaholic and his complicated kid. And here's to Damien, for finally pulling his head out of his ass long enough to notice her. The crowd laughed. Damien flipped Marcus off discreetly. They set the wedding for October, wanting enough time to plan, but not so much that the wait felt endless. Hannah wanted something small, intimate. Catherine wanted something that would make the society pages. They compromised on a ceremony at Discovery Park, the beach where everything had started, followed by a small reception at a restaurant nearby. Not Marchand, Hannah said firmly when Catherine suggested it. Anywhere but there. Why not? It's where you met. Exactly. It's weird, like having your wedding at your old office. They settled on a different venue, one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Sound. Catherine managed the logistics with the same ruthless efficiency she applied to corporate takeovers. Hannah focused on the things that mattered to her, the vows, the music, making sure Noah felt included and important. I want him to walk me down the aisle, Hannah told Damien 2 months before the wedding. If that's okay with you. You sure? That's traditionally the father's job, and your dad isn't here, Hannah finished quietly. And Noah is. He's been part of this from the beginning. It feels right that he should be part of this too. They asked Noah together. He considered it with the gravity of someone being offered a vital mission. I have to walk with you? He asked Hannah. If you want to. You don't have to if it makes you uncomfortable. Will there be people watching? Yes. A lot of people. Noah was quiet for a long moment. Then, okay, I'll do it. For you, Hannah, Mom. The night before the wedding, Hannah couldn't sleep. Damien found her on the deck at 2 a.m, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the city. Cold feet? He asked, sitting beside her. No, just thinking. About how much has changed in a year, how different my life is from what I thought it would be. She leaned against him. A year ago, I was serving overpriced food and going home to an empty apartment and convinced that was all I deserved. Now I'm getting married to a man I love, becoming a mother to an incredible kid, doing work that actually matters again. It feels impossible. But it's real. I know. That's what keeps surprising me, that good things can actually happen, even after terrible things. That you can rebuild yourself into something new. Something better, Damien corrected. I don't know about better. Different, maybe. More honest. Hannah pulled the blanket tighter. I used to think happiness was something you achieved, like a goal you work toward. But it's not, is it? It's something you choose every day, even on the hard days. Especially on the hard days. They sat in comfortable silence until Hannah yawned. Come to bed, Damien said. Big day tomorrow. Nervous? Terrified. You? Same, she smiled, but the good kind of terrified. The kind that means something important is happening. The wedding day arrived clear and bright, one of those perfect October days that Seattle sometimes produced as an apology for 9 months of gray. Hannah got ready at Catherine's house, something about tradition and not seeing the groom, while Damien helped Noah into his small suit at home. You look very handsome, Damien said, fixing his son's tie. I look weird. You look grown up. Same thing. But Noah was smiling, nervous and excited. At the beach, chairs were set up in neat rows facing the water. Not many, maybe 50 people total. Family, close friends, Hannah's former colleagues from the hospital who'd reached out after the lawsuit. Victoria Torres was there, which had made Hannah cry when she'd seen the RSVP. Damien stood at the front with Marcus beside him as best man, watching guests arrive. His heart was racing and his hands were sweating, and he'd never been more certain of anything in his life. The music started. Catherine walked down first, glowing with something that might have been pride. Then came the moment Damien had been waiting for. Hannah appeared at the end of the aisle, holding Noah's hand. She wore a simple dress, cream-colored, nothing elaborate. Her hair was down, the way he loved it. She was smiling and crying at the same time, and she was the most beautiful thing Damien had ever seen. Noah walked beside her solemnly, concentrating on his steps. When they reached Damien, the boy looked up at his father. I brought her, Noah announced, like you asked. Thank you, buddy. You did great. Noah went to sit with Mrs. Chen, leaving Hannah and Damien facing each other. The officiant said words about love and commitment, about choosing each other every day. But Damien barely heard them. He was too focused on Hannah's face, on the way she was looking at him like he was something precious and rare. When it came time for vows, Hannah went first. "I wrote something," she said, pulling out a folded paper with shaking hands. "But I'm not sure I can read it without falling apart." "Try," Damien said. "I want to hear it." Hannah took a breath. "A year ago, I thought my life was over in any way that mattered. I'd failed someone I loved, and I'd decided that the safest thing to do was stop loving altogether. Stop trying, stop hoping, stop believing that I deserved anything good. Then you and Noah walked into a restaurant, and everything changed. You saw me when I was trying to be invisible. You trusted me when I didn't trust myself. You gave me a reason to try again, to believe that my past didn't have to define my future. Damien, I promise to love you on the good days and the hard days. I promise to be patient when you're being stubborn, to call you out when you're being impossible, and to always, always choose this. Choose you, choose Noah, choose the family we've built together. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for teaching me that it's okay to be scared and brave at the same time." She was crying openly now, so was half the audience. Damien wasn't far behind. "My turn," he said, and was surprised his voice worked. "Hannah, I'm not good at this. At feelings and vulnerability and saying what I mean instead of hiding behind work or logic. But you make me want to try. You make me want to be the kind of person who shows up, who's present, who doesn't run away when things get difficult. You gave my son back his voice. You gave me back my hope. And I know we're going to mess this up sometimes. I know we're going to have fights and doubts and days when we wonder what the hell we're doing. But I also know that I'd rather mess it up with you than succeed with anyone else. So I promise to fight for this. For you, for Noah, for the life we're building. I promise to see you, really see you, even when you're trying to hide. And I promise to love you exactly as you are, scared and brave and brilliant and mine." The officiant pronounced them married. Damien kissed his wife, while their small audience applauded and Noah shouted, "Finally!" with perfect 6-year-old exasperation. The reception was exactly what they'd wanted. Good food, better wine, people they actually cared about instead of social obligations. Noah gave a toast that was mostly about jellyfish but ended with, "I'm glad Hannah Mom is staying forever now," which got the biggest applause of the night. Marcus cornered Damien near the end of the evening, both of them slightly drunk on champagne and happiness. "You did good," Marcus said. "Really good. I got lucky." Luck is just preparation meeting opportunity. You were ready for her when she showed up. That counts. Damien looked across the room to where Hannah was dancing with Noah, both of them laughing at something. His wife, his son, his family. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I guess it does." Later, much later, after the guests had left and Noah had fallen asleep in the car, on the way home, and Mrs. Chen had carried him inside, Damien and Hannah stood in their bedroom, not his anymore, but theirs, and helped each other out of formal clothes. "We did it," Hannah said, standing in her slip. "We actually did it. Having second thoughts already?" "No, just, I keep expecting to wake up. For this to turn out to be a dream I'm having in my old apartment." Damien pulled her close. "Not a dream. Real. We're real." They made love slowly, carefully, like they were learning each other for the first time, even though they'd done this dozens of times before. Something was different now. The promises they'd made public, the commitment they'd spoken out loud. It changed things in ways Damien hadn't expected. Afterward, lying in the dark, Hannah's head on his chest, she said, "I talked to a lawyer about adoption." Damien's heart stuttered. "Adoption?" "Of Noah. I want to legally be his mother, not just the woman his father married, but only if you're comfortable with that. If you think it's too soon, or if you want to wait, I think it's perfect," Damien said. "He'd love that, having it be official." "You think?" "I know." They started the adoption process the next week. Noah was thrilled when they told him, wanted to know if this meant Hannah Mom would be his mom in The Papers That Matter. Hannah assured him it did. The legal process took 6 months. During that time, Hannah's practice grew. She was seeing 8 clients now, all children with trauma histories or communication disorders. Word had spread about her work, about her specific expertise. She was getting referral requests from all over the city. "I might need to hire someone," she told Damien one evening, looking overwhelmed by her calendar. I can't keep up with the demand alone. Hire 2 people, 3. Build a practice, not just a solo operation. That's a lot. Running a business. You can handle it, and I can help with the business side if you need. She looked at him, something soft in her expression. You really believe in me. Always have. The adoption was finalized on a Tuesday in March. Nothing dramatic or ceremonial. Just a judge's signature, and suddenly Hannah was legally Noah's mother. They celebrated with ice cream and a movie night, Noah sandwiched between them on the couch. Does this mean you have to love me now? Noah asked Hannah. Because it's the law? I already loved you before it was the law, Hannah said. This just makes it official. Good. Because I love you too. Hannah, Mom. He fell asleep there, sprawled across both of them, and they didn't move him. Just sat there with a sleeping 7-year-old drooling on their legs, watching a movie neither of them was paying attention to. This is it, Hannah said quietly. This is what I was afraid of wanting, what I thought I didn't deserve. And now? Now I think maybe deserving isn't the point. Maybe it's about being willing to try, to show up, to choose this even when it's scary. Sounds like something a therapist would say. I am a therapist. Fair point. Spring became summer. Noah finished first grade with friends and decent grades and a teacher who actually understood him. Hannah's practice expanded into a small clinic with 2 other therapists working under her supervision. Catherine hosted another Sunday dinner and didn't criticize anyone's life choices even once, which Hannah declared a miracle. On a Saturday morning in July, almost exactly 2 years since that first dinner at Marchand, they went back to Discovery Park. Their beach, their spot. Noah ran ahead, already 8 now, and gangly with it, shouting about something he'd found in the rocks. Hannah and Damien followed more slowly, hands linked. Do you ever think about that first night? Hannah asked. What would have happened if I'd just taken your order and walked away? All the time, Damien admitted. I think about how close I came to missing this, to missing you. We almost didn't happen. But we did. Yeah. Hannah squeezed his hand. We did. At the beach, Noah was building something elaborate with driftwood and rocks, narrating the whole process. They sat on their log and watched him, this child who'd been silent for so long and now couldn't stop talking, creating worlds out of beach debris. I got a call yesterday, Hannah said, from Seattle Children's Hospital. They want to start a new program for kids with selective mutism. Asked if I'd be interested in directing it. That's huge. What did you say? I said I'd think about it. It would mean giving up some of my private clients, restructuring the clinic, a lot of changes. But it would also mean helping more kids like Noah, kids who are stuck in silence and can't find their way out. You'd be amazing at it. You think? I know. Damien pulled her close. Whatever you decide, I'll support it. We'll make it work. We, Hannah repeated. I like that. That it's always we now, not just me figuring everything out alone. That's what partnership is, what marriage is, what family is. Noah ran over, dragging a piece of driftwood twice his size. Help me, he demanded. It's too heavy. They both got up to help, the 3 of them working together to add the driftwood to his creation. When they stepped back, it looked like nothing so much as a small, lopsided fort. Noah beamed at it with pride. Perfect, he declared. Our house at the beach. Our house, Hannah agreed, ruffling his hair. Later, after Noah had exhausted himself running and swimming and exploring, they packed up to leave. Walking back to the parking lot, Noah between them holding both their hands, Damien felt something he'd been chasing for years without knowing it. Not happiness exactly. Happiness was too simple a word for something this complex, this hard-won. But contentment. The sense that despite everything that had gone wrong, despite all the pain and loss and fear, they'd built something worth protecting, something real. Dad? Noah said, looking up at him. Are you okay? Yeah, buddy. I'm more than okay. You look sad. Not sad. Just grateful, I think. For this, for you and Hannah, Mom, for all of it. Noah considered this with his usual seriousness. Me too, he said finally. I'm grateful too. They drove home through Seattle traffic, Noah chattering about his plans for the Driftwood Fort next week, Hannah adding suggestions, Damien only half listening because he was too busy memorizing this moment. The sound of his son's voice, the presence of his wife, the ordinary miracle of a Saturday afternoon. That night, after Noah was asleep, Damien found Hannah in what had become her office, reviewing case notes. "Come to bed," he said. "In a minute. I want to finish these." Hannah. She looked up, saw something in his face. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I wanted to say thank you for taking a chance on us. On me and Noah. I know it wasn't easy." "Best decision I ever made," Hannah said, "even with all the fear and uncertainty and panic attacks in parking lots." "Especially with all that?" "Especially with all that. Because it means I chose this knowing exactly how scary it was. Chose it anyway." Damien pulled her up from the desk, held her close. "I love you. I love you too. Now can I finish these notes?" "No, notes can wait. Come to bed with your husband." So demanding. "You love it." She did, actually. Loved the way he'd learned to ask for what he needed instead of hiding behind work. Loved the way they'd built a life where both of them could be imperfect and scared and still show up for each other. In bed, in the dark, Hannah said, "I'm taking the hospital job." "Yeah?" "Yeah. I think it's time. Time to stop being scared of going back to the work I was meant to do." "I think that's great. You'll be okay with the schedule changes, the longer hours sometimes?" "We'll make it work." "We always do." Hannah was quiet for a moment. "Remember when I told you I thought I was too broken to be fixed?" "I remember. I was wrong. I wasn't broken, just hurt. And healing doesn't mean becoming who you were before the hurt. It means becoming someone new, someone stronger. Someone who knows they can survive the worst and still choose to love." "Exactly." Hannah turned to face him in the dark. "Thank you for seeing that in me before I could see it myself. But thank you for letting me." They fell asleep like that, tangled together, and in the morning Noah woke them up by jumping on the bed demanding pancakes. It was loud and chaotic and perfect, and as Damien stumbled to the kitchen to start breakfast, he thought about all the ways his life had changed since that cold December night 2 years ago. He'd walked into Marchand desperate and hopeless, carrying a son he couldn't reach and a future that looked empty. He'd left with the first fragile threads of something he hadn't known he was allowed to want. Those threads had become a lifeline, and that lifeline had become a foundation, and now he had this. A family built from broken pieces, imperfect and loud, and filled with people who loved each other despite and because of their damage. Money hadn't bought this. Status hadn't earned it. All his success and all his power had meant nothing in the face of a 6-year-old's silence. What had changed everything was the willingness to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to see value in a shy waitress that the rest of the world had overlooked. Hannah appeared in the kitchen, Noah attached to her leg, demanding she make the pancakes because Dad's were always too flat. "Excuse me," Damien said. "My pancakes are perfectly acceptable." "They're boring," Noah declared. "Hannah Mom makes them into shapes." "Shapes take time. It's Saturday. We have time." So Hannah made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs while Noah narrated their epic battles, and Damien set the table and poured juice, and it was the most ordinary, extraordinary morning of his life. Later, much later, when they were old and Noah was grown with children of his own, Damien would remember this morning, would remember the way sunlight fell through the kitchen window and the sound of his son's laughter and the presence of his wife making dinosaur pancakes. Would remember it as the moment he understood that healing wasn't about fixing what was broken. It was about accepting that broken things could still be beautiful, that imperfect people could still build perfect moments, that love didn't require wholeness, only willingness. They ate their dinosaur pancakes and planned their day and bickered about whose turn it was to do dishes, and it was everything Damien had never known to wish for. This was the miracle his billions couldn't buy. This messy, imperfect, loud, beautiful life with a woman who'd learned to forgive herself and a son who'd found his voice. This was what mattered. Not success or status or wealth, but the simple, complicated act of showing up for the people you loved. Every day. Even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. And as Hannah laughed at something Noah said and reached across the table to squeeze Damien's hand, as morning light turned their kitchen golden and the city woke up outside their windows, Damien understood that some miracles arrived exactly as you'd imagined them, and some arrived better,